Okay, so calling to order December 17, Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education meeting. Welcome to a packed house. This is the most, imagine, pre-holiday board attendance we've ever had. I'm going to pass the meeting over to Dr. Wilson for any announcements that you have.
Yes, I have a couple of things to say. First of all, I want to extend congratulations on behalf of the board to the academic challenge team that on Saturday passed down the 15th. They were the challenge team. They won that matchup, and something to be very proud of. Congratulations to all the students involved in that. Middle school, we'd like to mention that we're running a couple of really outstanding programs, educational programs. One that they had as a speaker, a Holocaust survivor, that would be Judith Elfman, and it was very powerful and very enlightening to the young generation to learn about that tragic history. I would also like to say that there was a wonderful holiday dinner and concert program provided for the elderly in town, and that was also a terrific event. Also, the middle school had the Alvin Ailey dance students perform recently, and as you know about the district has been running, and will again tonight speak about the capital bond project that's under consideration. So there's a lot of good things happening, and a lot of good things in of course, the sports field. And I would just like to make a personal note. I know there are going to be remarks on some of the individual accomplishments that we'll be hearing about, but I should like to say we are proud of all our athletes. They play the game in a sportsmanlike fashion, and they make every effort to play it clean and to win and bring back. All of us are appreciative of the coaches and the players themselves and everybody who has helped to create another memorable season. Congratulations.
Great, thanks. Jesse, how long do you think you got? Because I'm thinking public comment might be a while, so maybe we start off sports first and then roll from there. Yeah.
Are you ready for me now?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off, Jesse, with the sports awards.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure we have a couple of, most of the athletes in the room are 2 or 3 season athletes, so many of them came directly from practice, and they're, I think, ready for either homework or dinner or maybe bed. No, I really do. I think I have one little anecdote that I have to say. One of the things that makes Hastings such a wonderful place to be, I'm going to really try my best to give a shout out to my brother and our teacher here, the athletes that are here in the room. We had a wonderful varsity basketball game last Friday. There was a ton of people in the gym. People were cheering. Everything was really positive. Everyone was having a wonderful time. Just in case you wanted to know, we won. Yeah. Okay. But my favorite part of the night, hands down, all right, was when the stands started chanting something that I just didn't understand. I couldn't figure out what they were doing. I looked a little closer, I listened a little closer. I realized they were shouting photography advice to the photographers on the court taking pictures of the athletes. And this is a place in Hastings where we can show support. There was easily a few hundred people in the gymnasium, but we also have the support of all of our academic and all the other areas of special, like AP Art. So that was a really wonderful thing to see, kind of all those worlds kind of meeting somewhere in the middle. I'm going to take about 9 minutes to just kind of go through some. I'll never have enough time to go through all of the accomplishments of our sports teams and the individuals on them. But this is an attempt to kind of pair together with some of the things that we do outside of this event. For example, last year we started, and really has been spearheaded by the Hastings Yellow Jackets Booster Club, a banquet. It's a really wonderful affair that we hold 3 times a year. And the focus of that banquet really is just a celebration of the participation, the effort, the commitment that the athletes have and their coaches. There's really no focus on awards there. It's really a focus on community and experience. And it's a great event. I'm thrilled that we started it last year and that it's supported so strongly by our boosters. All right, now to our student athletes, right? That's the most important piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just about a minute on each of the sports programs. I was going to ask the athletes on that team to step up here, but that might be a little dangerous for the people sitting in the aisles and everyone else. Sure, stand. So if we have, can I have my cross-country runners just stand so we can see you? We have a few in the back. So our cross-country team had, many challenges, right? But one big one, since the bond, one of the last things to get put into place was a home course for track and field, right? That's not an easy thing to do. It's not like installing a turf field or a grass field or making a baseball diamond. You actually have to weave your way through the woods. If you've never seen a cross-country event, it is grueling, all right, grueling. So thank you to the Buildings and Grounds Department for putting that together. As we went through the season, we saw that some of even our youngest athletes were really stepping up to a new level that we're really thrilled to see. So we have all league honors for Kaylee Oppenheimer, Caitlin Guilfoyle, and Hallie Sprock. And an honorable mention for Karen Novak, Felix Sprock, and Alex Wilson. This is just a note to all the athletes. I was going to hand you guys your plaque right now, but instead, as soon as this is over, we'll meet you outside and we'll give you everything, all your hardware, okay? So, one student in particular I would really like to highlight here, because this is not something that happens every day. We had one of our student athletes qualify for the state championship in cross country. So what that means basically is in Class C cross country, there's about 140 runners, all right? And Kaylee Oppenheimer came in, was it 45th, 43rd? 45th. That's an amazing accomplishment, not just for any athlete, but an athlete with so many years of eligibility left here in high school. I have to tell you, I ran more that day during that event than I have in a long time to try to get photos on each thing. What was it, Heartbreak Hill? What were the names? Cardiac Hill. What was the other one? There are two hills that are very aptly named through that experience. So I would just like to recognize the accomplishment of qualifying. A tradition we started last year for all of our individual sport athletes that qualify for the state championships is we embroider their name, their time, their accomplishment on a little banner that gets held up, that'll be posted in the athletic office. So this is an example of last year's. We had 3 students, and we'll be starting a new one this year, which I'm very excited about. Kaylee's name will be the very first one on there. All right. So this team I have are really near and dear to me because at the very beginning of the season, if you know, I actually spent about 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks, coaching varsity field hockey for a little while. I see Katrina covering her eyes. I had such a wonderful time. They were also so patient with me as I learned a new sport. It's a real testament to the challenges there. They can tell you much better than I can the difference between playing field hockey on a natural grass field versus a turf field is very, very different. And so they balance the challenges of practicing here, playing half of our games here, but also having to compete on many of the other fields that we went to. So just to recognize 2 players who earned honorable mention, all league, would be Hannah Sperber and Katrina Spinoza. And Hannah has to stay standing because she actually won back-to-back Player of the Year. Hannah, I realize that's last year's Rivertown Sports, but your photo last year was a lot better. I thought this was a better presentation. She had all of her goalie gear on. You couldn't really see her in this year's. It's a really wonderful honor that she got, and I think it says a lot about her. The very beginning of her interview, she thanked the seniors that were on her team. She thanked her coaches, Mr. Wendell and myself. It wasn't about Hannah. It was about everybody else, which I thought was so wonderful. And it speaks a lot about her as an individual, but also our sports programs. So for those of you that are kind of sports heads, you know that this year is going to be very difficult for us. Our basic league alignment changed, and there'll be two names that should strike fear into you if you play many of our sports. This year, our leagues, two schools were added, Ardsley High School and Albertus Magnus. Both of those schools are wonderfully, they're very good sports schools. What that means to us is we've got a very tough road in almost every single sport we offer. So this, our boys and our girls soccer team, which we'll talk about now, they had an incredibly difficult regular season, more difficult than in years past. So let's start here recognizing our all-league recipients: Griffin Jancarelli, Aman Rai, Akshan Rai, Julian Jacobs, and Eli Bertan. We have all section honorable mention for Eli and all section for Julian Jacobs. And for girls soccer, we have for all league, we have Anya Lefevre, Julia Spencer, Tia Abiridzik, and Alexander Manley. Can you guys stand? And all league honorable mention, Eva Aronoff, Emily Penner, and Ava Nelson. We also, and here's the last one for girls soccer, all section honorable mention for Anya Lefevre. All right. I don't think she's here. I haven't seen her. But we also had an all-league recipient for girls varsity tennis, which was Savoy Koken. And I believe this is our last sport of the presentation. But we have all-league recipient Jen Caruso here. Marley Edwards also received all-league honorable mention. So I did want just 30 seconds to kind of highlight one thing that I thought was such a wonderful exercise that our varsity volleyball team really kind of put forward, worked very, very hard on this year. Throughout a number of different activities, they had raised close to $3,000, both in participating with a local gym, but also fundraising, doing bake sales, sold T-shirts, which disappeared in days. It was really a wonderful event, and they were able to raise almost $3,000 for the Breast Cancer Research Fund. So I wanted to recognize them. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite all of the athletes, all of their parents. We'll step out into the hallway because there's a lot more that needs to happen during tonight's meeting. We do have kind of our photo screen up in the hallway, so if you'd like to take a photo or two with your child, or I know I would personally like some photos of the athletes, please step out with us. We'll make sure everyone has their awards. It may take us a minute, all right? But thank you once again. Thank you. just going to get rid of the communication and I'll bring it out.
That's the right word. Yeah,
Elliot, we're going to pass it over to you next, okay?
Hey, can I have that picture? I like that picture.
What's that?
It's on the floor back there.
Remind me, please. You got it?
Oh, that's his voice. I used to play soccer with that guy. The Rise, Dad. Sunday soccer. I would see him at games. All of our
Okay. We're gonna keep moving forward here. So before we get to the public comment, I just want to pass it over to Elliot for our student report, and because he's the only student left in the room, I'll acknowledge congratulations on your acceptance recently to Rice University. So smooth sailing from here on out for the rest of the year, right?
Yeah. So what's been cooking up recently at student union meetings is they are organizing a grade Olympics for the first time ever at Hastings High School. So grades are going to compete against one another in this Olympic competition that's starting this year, which that's the bulk of SU right now.
When is that going to start?
TBD.
TBD. All right.
Sorry, I'll ask a question. Is it, because when we had met with the SU, I know they had talked about wanting to mix the grades. Should they come to a different decision?
It's going to be grade versus grade, as I understand it.
So are there any other things going
on in terms of students, SU, issues at school that we should be knowing about?
Not that I'm thinking about right now. Yeah.
I think I got into college.
Right. You got into college, and that's right. Well, that's about it. Thanks, Elliot.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to open it up for public comment. Just so everyone knows, it's a packed room. There's two big topics on the agenda. One is the board discussion. I think we're going to do that first, and then the second is going to be the central office and some of the considerations around that. There's a lot of people here. And if someone says the same thing you were going to say, if you want to pass your time, great. You obviously always have the opportunity to stand up and talk at a board meeting. We do have a timer. We're going to stick to it pretty close, so 3 minutes. Please state your name and whether you live in Hastings. And with that, I'll pass it off to the group. Is there anyone who's...
We're just...
Jacqueline Weitzman, 26 Elm Place. In a previous professional life, I worked for many years for a large architectural engineering firm as an interior designer and a member of master planning teams for large institutional projects, including work on 22 New York City schools. So it is with this expertise that I've been following the discussion about the bond very closely, in particularly the work planned at Hillside. I am in complete support of the work being planned for the infrastructure of both buildings as well as the renovation of the Farragut Auditorium, a project long overdue. And Hillside is definitely in need of being brought up to code as well as renovation and the addition of new classrooms and meeting spaces. My concern is that only a detailed facilities needs assessment has been made at Hillside. The current work includes replacing failing infrastructure, which is vital, but the design of the addition as it stands seems to be merely a response to a wish list, not a design based on a long-term comprehensive master plan for the school based on visionary programming and growth. At the last meeting about the bond, a number of people asked whether you were being bold enough in your vision for the school, and I respect your desire to keep the total cost of the bond at $17 million. But my concern is that the design for Hillside as it stands only meets our immediate needs, needs which will only be met in 4 years, and which will be 4 years old by the time the project is completed. Where is the vision for the next bond? Has a full assessment been made? And I'm not just talking about the 5-year needs assessment for updating existing facilities, but a long-term comprehensive master plan from which we can make smart design choices for phasing in new spaces with this bond that can be built upon in 5 years when we take out our next bond and 10 years after that. This master planning should include a Hillside's vision for growth, as the needs at Hillside have expanded for special education, space for specials in the sciences have been reduced. It seems obvious that there is and could continue to be a need for additional classrooms. Our net gain of additional classrooms in this design seems to fluctuate from meeting to meeting, which shows that there really needs to be a clear master plan that maps out the accommodation of expected growth at Hillside, not just for this bond, but for bonds to come. Will we be able to build up? Will we be able to build out? Where are we going to expand in the future? The current design does not seem to take any of this into consideration. I will not debate the need for or against the cafeteria at Hillside. It is obvious, though, that our current inability to use the all-purpose room as a place to eat, based on the poorly chosen flooring that was installed there a few years ago, has been put forth as the reason to build an additional multi-purpose room, which to my eyes looks like a redundancy. And it doesn't solve the current lunchtime space issues for another 4 years. Also, with the current placement of the new cafetorium at one end of the building, it forces the need to move all of the 3rd and 4th graders daily, about 300 students, from their wing at one end of the school all the way to the other end for lunch. This travel time will eat into their already short lunch period, no pun intended, not to mention unnecessary major daily mass movement in the halls. Why aren't we renovating the existing multipurpose room and stage? Do I need to stop? No. Or is that
What you do?
Why aren't we renovating?
I started when
Why
you
aren't we
started.
renovating the existing multipurpose room and stage so they can act in all the wonderful ways that the newly proposed cafetorium will work? A project that could be implemented in phases over time to ensure its continuous availability for use over the next few years, as well as providing a more central room for lunchtime. May I have 20 more seconds?
Stop.
Okay.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
I'm willing to donate my 20 seconds to Jackie. Please.
Thank you. Okay. So it can be in continuous use. Perhaps then build a new gymnasium in the new addition, one which will eventually be a useful and much-needed multi-purpose space for the school and the community at large. All of the work could be easily phased in if it is well-planned and, again, available for use in a more timely fashion than is currently being proposed. This is just one example of the types of solutions that may be more prudent considering the limitations of space at Hillside, within which future growth must be made. There's very little space there. We have to really use it well. I want to support this bond wholeheartedly, but I ask that you all step back and take the responsible step of creating thoroughly comprehensive master plan for the future growth of Hillside that we can all stand behind and in whose implementation we can all be proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the meeting.
Okay.
I'll go if nobody else can go.
Okay.
Hi, Sylvia Robles, 9 Harvard Lane. And I apologize for my voice. Good evening. I'm here on behalf of my 3 sons, who will next year be attending each of our district's 3 schools. During my 10 years in Hastings, I've come to appreciate its many strengths, including its schools and their tradition of academic excellence. The reason I've decided to make a public comment tonight is that I'm profoundly concerned about the future of these schools. While I see many dedicated staff, teachers, and administrators, I cannot help but notice that there's been an inability to retain district leadership to implement a long-term educational vision. The result, to my eyes, has been a surprising lack of academic cohesion within our small district. It is hard to overlook that each of our neighboring Rivertown villages promote a bridge of learning between their schools by empowering an assistant superintendent to develop and share a common curriculum that allows each grade to build upon material in preparation for the next level of challenge. I fear that as a school community, we have been lulled into convincing ourselves that we can make do with things as they are, reacting to crises when they emerge, and never pushing to ask how much we could achieve if we invested more in our schools. An analysis of spending over the past 20 years shows we are far behind surrounding villages in the amount of funds allocated towards our schools. The decisions we have made around infrastructure played out in the real world for me last week as I waited to pick up my second grader when Hillside was forced to close early because drainage problems prevented toilets from flushing. This situation is patently unacceptable because it makes us shrug in resignation and think that this is the way things work in Hastings. It is cynicism that has us resign ourselves to accepting that specialist teachers should live with the limited footprint of a building they have outgrown and take their materials on a cart. The bond presents us with a proposal born of a committee's deliberative process to address a variety of unmet needs. As a district, we deserve long overdue classroom space, a usable auditorium in the middle school, and even a place for children in need to access a breakfast they might otherwise go without. I find it patently unacceptable that we should be complacent and believe that the status quo is the best we can do for our children and for our educators. In conclusion, I will say that one of the most positive aspects of living in Hastings is that we're close-knit and have a multitude of opportunities to become involved in the school community. We have many active citizens who feel our sense of engagement so deeply that as one of many stakeholders, we too often fail to step back from our perspective and see the bigger picture and the impact our strident disagreements have on students and teachers. If we continue to fall into disparate camps without working towards common solutions that embrace compromise, we will remain divided and grow stagnant. On behalf of my family, at least, I can honestly say that I believe our children and our village deserves much better, and that I believe we do have the will to move forward together. Please support the hiring of an assistant superintendent to focus the direction of our learning and vigorously endorse passage of the bond at the $17 million level. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, again. Hi, my name is Kate Loengart. I live at 9 Amherst Drive. I'm also speaking tonight as one of the co-presidents of SEPTA, and on behalf of Jennifer Destin of Stanley Avenue, who's our other co-president who couldn't be here tonight because of a work conflict. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody in this room where SEPTA stands on the issue of the curriculum lead position. We stand with Dr. Katzman's educational audit, which first reflected the need for a centralized district office featuring both a special ed and curriculum lead with K through 12 oversight. We stand with our letters on the subject dated both January and June 2018, where we reiterated this stance. We stand with both superintendents who have had tenure during this time, both who were very, very different types of leaders, and both believe that this position should be an assistant superintendent level. We stand again with Dr. Katzman after her recent visit 3 weeks ago, where after reviewing the progress that had been made and just seeing how far we could take it with all the work that has been done by both the special education and general education departments, that even after all of that, she still recommends that we need these positions with full oversight in order to pave our path forward and complete the work that has been done. It's so important to note here that this is not a referendum on our current leaders or teachers, as some might suggest in this argument. This is instead a call to get everyone who works for our children the support they need as they meet the educational challenges of the 21st century, which is no small task for any educational institution at this point. It's also to help special education reach into the 21st century, because we're still working in a 20th century model. The time has come for our schools to be less restrictive, more inclusive, more differentiated, and which should benefit all learners. Special education, general education, there shouldn't be a differentiation in our schools today. When one leader is tasked, with planning beyond the day-to-day of a building, we can have someone with the sole purpose of developing a curricula with a full scope and sequence that can span our buildings. We'll have someone constantly bringing new thinking and ideas because they will have the freedom to do so. We'll have somebody who can implement professional development beyond our current piecemeal programmatic approach. We'll have somebody who can bring together these two educational silos that we're all working so hard to break down, but need that extra step forward to arrive in a place where we have a full instructional vision. We're proud, Okay. SEPTA asks that we do what is right to move our schools forward, attract the best candidates, and do what is right by our children. We ask that you approve this position on the assistant superintendent level tonight. There might be some dissent. There might be some that question your choice. But you will go to bed tonight knowing that you have been leaders who have listened to experts and you have acted. You have thought for 2 years about this, but the time has come to make a choice tonight. I have one more sentence. Perhaps most importantly, my children, your children, and our children will thank you for it. And that's the exact reason everybody is here tonight. We are looking to you as the leaders of this community who were elected to make choices based on what is best for all of us. And I ask for you to do that this evening. Thank you.
Catherine Conqueror, music teacher at Hillside. Last week I was devastated to find out that there's a likelihood that music might be going on a cart. And there was some confusion about how likely that is and who that decision came from. But after speaking to a lot of my colleagues and some parents in the community, it seems like there are solutions that will have less impact on not just the students' education, but also the morale and the faculty's daily work. So I was really relieved to hear also last week that Amy Kazis is going to be forming a committee to discuss further options as to avoid having our special areas go on the go. Even if it is pre-bond, even the year or whatever it might be will still have a huge effect on the children's learning. So I'm looking forward to working with Amy as we move forward and try to brainstorm some new ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Cunningham. I live at 6 Nichols Drive. I am a parent of 2 kids in the district, but I'm also the co-president of the PTSA. And I just want to state my support for everything that Kate said, the SEPTA rep, because I truly believe that now is the time to make the decision to make the director of curriculum and instruction a superintendent position. And I want to make it clear as I'm saying this that it's not just, first of all, I find it a little bit odd that we're even discussing it since it was in Dr. Katzman's report. But I think this is something that needs to happen for every child in the district. There are problems with curriculum that can be fixed by somebody who's in charge K through 12. And we've heard about these problems as representatives of the PTSA for years and years, and it's time to act, and it's time to make a difference. You know, the kids are the ones who are suffering if it's not in place and it's not working. So please, please, Assistant Superintendent, thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Andrus, a resident of Hastings, and very quickly, also in support of Sylvia's talk and Kate's as well. I speak as a mom of 2 in this district and as the other co-president of the PTSA. Specifically, the hiring of the assistant superintendent, one point to add is that both superintendents and Dr. Katzman were people who reflected on the district as a whole, who spoke to numerous stakeholders within the school and outside of the school, and all came to the conclusion that this was too big a job for one person. It's too hard, to use Dr. Katzman's words, to get everyone facing in the same direction across the 3 schools. We've really tried it. We have very dedicated principals in all 3 schools and a teaching staff who is ready and willing, but it's just too much. I don't think there's another choice here in order to help every child. The scope and sequence has to be addressed, and the schools have to be working together. So I also ask you to approve the assistant superintendent position for that director of curriculum.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Cunningham. I'm a 13-year resident of Hastings. and have been an informed, active participant in the special education discussion for many years, too many years. I guess I'm a little bit confused. Two things. One, why we have two such important topics on the same night, but that's another discussion. Both the bond is very important, as is the restructuring of our educational programs. But I'm also confused specifically about the ongoing debate and deliberation about how we best address our educational needs, both in terms of general education and special education, recognizing that it's a spectrum, they're not silos, even though that's how we've been treating it historically in this district. We've discussed that. I mean, we've discussed that ad nauseum. I understand there's ignorance in the community about what it should look like, how we go forward. And I understand that people may not understand special education is not a silo, it's a spectrum. We're all diverse learners in this district. I get that. I used to be ignorant as well about and uninformed about that. I had a wide eye-opening when my daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia. But I can't understand the continued, almost feigned dilemma by the districts, by the classrooms, and by the Board of Ed about what are we going to do? How are we going to address this problem? We know it's an issue. Parents have been talking about the special education deficits for years. There's been a lawsuit. There's data that backs this up. We've now had 2 superintendents that have agreed with these concerns. The prior acting interim special ed director recognized concerns before Laura was hired. We've now had an Harvard-trained educational consultant come in and do a comprehensive review, not once, but twice, of our educational programs and has made extensive recommendations about what needs to get done. And I agree wholeheartedly that there needs to be an assistant superintendent position discussed and approved here tonight, but it needs to go beyond that. There were recommendations beyond that which are not on the agenda tonight about restructuring the organization such that general education curriculum and special education curriculum, they work together. The director of curriculum education, whatever you're going to call it, assistant superintendent, and the director of special education have to be able to work together to make sure that this educational program, this educational curriculum is going to benefit all of our students, all of our learners, because it's not one or the other. These are not binary choices. Having a strong special education program enhances everyone's education. Okay, let me rephrase it. Everyone's education. This is not someone else is going to get a bigger piece of the pie and my child's going to get a smaller piece. We're all in this together. We have a shared responsibility in the classrooms, in the building, in this lecture room, and in this community to accept responsibility for the education of everybody that walks in this door, irrespective of their color, their gender identification, their learning style. I can't imagine any other student population that would have so much evidence, so much data that suggests that we're underserving them and a roadmap to fix it, and yet we would think, how are we going to fix it? I don't understand. This is 2 years we've been doing this. It's no longer the malignant, willful ignorance of an individual. It's now purposeful, and it's a choice, and it's your choice, and if you make that choice, it's because you don't care. You need to take responsibility. You've been elected to do so, and we're going to hold you to it.
Hi, my name's Sarah Brockus. I live at 37 South Calumet Avenue. I've been a resident here for about 14 years. The last time I spoke before the board, what I said was, have courage. Do what's right for this community, and think out of the box, and don't be afraid, and we have your back. I'm here to support an assistant superintendent position again. I remember the time when we had a director of curriculum who was excellent and got pushed out of this community. And I want to talk real for a second. You will face forces inside the infrastructure and current staff leadership who don't want to be controlled. They don't want to be controlled by somebody who wants to look at it organically across the board, and they're going to push back on you really hard. And I just want to remind you that you're here for us. You're here for us as parents who moved to this town for great schools for their kids. And don't forget that. When people are pushing back hard, remember, we're here because of our kids and your parents with us. So don't forget us. Have courage. Do the right thing. It's been way too long.
Hi, my name is Carrie Gould. I live at 61 Summit Drive, and my day job is that I'm Director of Capital Planning at the New York Public Library. And although I agree with what Jackie says, I'm an urban planner by training, I just feel like right now we are at a moment in Hastings where we need to act on the facility, especially at Hillside. I think there is an extreme shortage of space. I think if we undertake a comprehensive master plan right now, it will be 3 more years before we move on this. So I think I hire design teams all the time. I think in the programming phase of that, we can flesh out some of these issues. I just think it is very important and vital to move. I will also say at the library, I don't know what the short-term plan is at Hillside. I think it's unfortunate we're in this dilemma right now, and probably because we did not have a 10-year capital plan or a vision, but we're here today, and I will say, the minute you roll out trailers for kids to go to school in will be a very sad day in Hastings. We at the public library will not even use trailers for temp space when we close a branch because it's just an extremely unpleasant experience. It's not enlightening, it's just an awful learning environment. So unfortunately, that might be your short-term plan, but I really feel we need to act now so that is out. If there are trailers or whatever the solution is, it is at the shortest amount of time possible. So again, I appreciate a master planning practice and exercise, but I just really feel I'm on the planning board in this town. I've been on the Waterfront Infrastructure Committee. It will not be a short process. So I spoke about this, the whole bond, at the first meeting. I really think it's not a good idea to push things off and use the expense budget or operating funds to deal with deferred maintenance. It's a big mistake. And even if you do trailers, that's an expense to the district that you're paying. So I really feel the moment is now. The building needs a lot of work. It's definitely short on space. And I do think if you work with the architect, there are ways to address it. I don't think it's such a big environment that walking from one end of the building to the other for lunch is that much of an inconvenience. So I just really feel it's important. As I said, I do this every day. I look at condition assessments. These buildings need investment. Obviously, I think most people are on board with the infrastructure improvements, but Hillside really needs the extra space. As I said, my daughter is in what I consider an overcrowded classroom in 3rd grade for a district where we pay a very high level of taxes. So I think that's unfortunate, and that shouldn't be the situation, and we should expect more for our kids. Okay, so that's it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ann Melvin, and I reside at 24 Whitman Street. And thank you all for your time on being on the board. I realize it's a tremendous amount of work. My daughter started going to Hillside when Mr. Hubbard was the interim principal at Hillside. And boy, was that a happy place. It was such a happy place. Mr. Hubbard came from Chappaqua, interestingly, and he knew what he was doing for those 2 years he was there. And since then, my years at Hastings, my daughter's years here, have just plummeted. Every year gets worse and worse. And you guys got to do something. I mean, I heard Sarah Brocka say, the parents have your back. You've got serious systemic issues in this school district. They're written out in the special ed program. Many of us could write them out for you. You probably didn't even need her to tell you that. I'm sure you've received a lot of letters stating exactly what she's told you. But it's got to change. I mean, the gig is up. People's agendas need to get put on hold. There are children that are involved here. That's what we need to be focused on. What is best for the children, not all these individual adult agendas that some are focused on. I feel very strongly this school district is just going to plunk it. I mean, no disrespect for you, Dr. Wilson, but I said before you were hired, we need more than one person to figure out what's going on in the school district. There are masterminds at play. They know what they're doing. They're very calculating at what they do. They leave people like floored. They'd rather leave the district than have to really explain to their neighbors and friends what really just happened to them, because they look like they're fine. It must just be me. But meantime, it's all over this district. It's been going on for years. A lot of the board knows it and don't want to talk about it because it doesn't involve their agenda. But we need to get back to the agenda of the children. That is what matters. And that list needs to get tended to, that list from the special ed. It needs to boom, boom, boom. Let's get 2 people hired for the superintendent if we need to. This is like enough. You know, we've pocketed enough money all these years. We've saved enough money not doing anything. Let's do something. Let's get the right people. We got a lot of smart people in this district who would help you all out, who have the right, they have their intentions in the right place. That's what we need. Right placed, intentioned people running this. And we've got some of them. Thank you to those of you who are up there and are those people. We need more of them. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kevin Doyle. I live at 71 Rose Street. I have a baby and I have a first grader in the district. This is my first time at a Board of Ed meeting, so I didn't prepare anything. But I wanted to make a brief comment on the 2 major issues. As far as the bond, there are fantastic ideas that the bond could be made better. Many things could be done, could be made better. I absolutely agree with that. But I really want to put forth the idea that we shouldn't let something perfect stop us from doing something good. The district is behind in spending as compared to our neighboring communities, and I really think it's important to start this. And what the bond will do now will make things better than they are. Absolutely, in the next, whenever it's time to roll over and start a new bond, we should take the time in between now and then and really come up with a really detailed, perfect plan to, I mean, nothing will ever be perfect, but a way to expand and look toward the future. As far as the assistant superintendent, I very, very strongly would like to advocate that you have that. I think it's very surprising that isn't in place. And when Dr. Katzman talked about how there's different criteria for students in the 3 different schools and how the 3 schools are an island, I really think that needs to change. I believe there's an argument in opposition to the position being an assistant superintendent that says, well, we're a small town and we have really dedicated professionals, so perhaps we don't need that. To me, I feel like that is an argument for it. I was a New York City public school teacher for a few years, and there were often things that came from on high that weren't appropriate for the classrooms. I mean, it was a very, very giant system, and things weren't appropriate. In a small town, when there are ideas decided by people in positions of authority, there will be opportunity for the teachers themselves to speak to this assistant superintendent directly. Because we're a small community and we all can share our opinions, I think I don't see any harm in having a more organized structure. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hallie Anderson, 21 Mariana Drive. I just want to say that I volunteered to be on the Facilities Committee early in the process to create the bond. And I just want everyone in the community to realize that it was a long, painstaking process, and Maureen spent months and months and months and months. So the plan they've come up with is not haphazard. I don't want anyone to think that. Jeremy was on the... It was a long process. So I just want everyone to know that it is well thought out, and there are pressing needs, and as a community, we must invest in our schools. If we have to go to 27 kids in a classroom at Hillside, if you think that won't affect your real estate value, you're dreaming, you know, like you don't want to have your taxes increased by a bond, but do you want your house values to plummet either? Like, there is 2 sides to every coin. And as far as So I want to wholeheartedly support the bond. I also want to make a quick statement about the assistant superintendent position. Having had kids go through schools, I just think they are so philosophically disconnected, it's mind-boggling. The middle school is homogeneous groupings, everyone's the same, but the high school is like, you know, you step into geometry honors and get your guts ripped out. The schools are so disconnected that we need somebody in charge at the top level to guide the way so that there's more seamless transition between the schools. That's all. Thank you.
Nina Siegel, 35 Fraser Place, and honestly it's feeling a bit like Groundhog Day because 4 or 5 years ago we were here talking about our children and the lack of coherence in curriculum, professional development, and tiered supports when we were talking for months, if not even years, about the fields. Now, instead of talking about turf versus grass, we're talking about buildings and carts. And while I know my husband and I support the bond wholeheartedly, more critically now, beyond our buildings failing, our children are still failing. And quite frankly, the strategy tonight to focus solely on the Director of Curriculum and Instruction feels a bit like another attempt to stall the inevitable audit recommendation that was already adopted 18 months ago as a result of the federal lawsuit to give special education decision-making authority at a cabinet level along with the superintendent and the Director of Curriculum. We know that Dr. Sinanis tried to implement this and was stymied to the point that he resigned. The community believes this is because the organizational structure recommended as best practice threatened the authority of a few key individuals who are not willing to embrace the changes to legally and, more importantly, ethically help our children. And our children have been caught in the crosshairs, and as such, we've lost another valuable 18 months of proper implementation of their IEPs with goals unmet, either because teachers still don't have the tools, principals don't have the will, and Laura doesn't have the authority. We know that there are a few of you in the BOE have supported this and have been thwarted, just as Dr. Sinanis was, and as Laura still is. And I mentioned Laura Sullivan. Let me tell you that we stand behind her 100% and applaud her tireless work on behalf of our children in spite of the pushback she gets every day. So tonight is D-Day. Dr. Katzman returned on the 3rd. She made her position clear. We agree and we request that you endorse the entire cabinet structure tonight. Failure to do so will not only result in a loss of credibility with the community, but honestly, an active exploration of further legal action.
Hello, my name is Eric Schultz. I live at 160 Mount Hope. I'm a parent of twins, so I have a pretty unique view on the curriculum for the entire school district. I can talk about all this differentiation. I think it's a great thing that should be happening in the classrooms as well. I haven't had 1 year where my kids have had similar education on subjects. It's pretty much inconsistent. There's no unity. There's no umbrella. I have seen a lot of different things come across the board, but I haven't seen anything from principals where they're going, standing in front of here. Now, I may not know this just because I don't pay attention to every meeting, where they're going, I want this new curriculum that is for core academics, that addresses special ed and general ed. They exist. I know it. It's part of my day job. I also see that in some of the notes for this meeting today, that they're mentioning about how a lot of the other school districts have curriculum assistant superintendents and that they were hired from within. Given that we haven't seen principals standing up to the plate saying, look, we want these academic programs, I would suggest that they may not have the interest in doing things like this. And if they now have the interest because it is a cabinet level position, I would question whether or not the interest is based on whether or not they actually want to be doing curriculum work or they want to be reporting to the superintendent. And those things have to be really critically viewed throughout the whole process. I really support the assistant superintendent, like every other person who has talked here so far, at the cabinet level, and it should be somebody who has a genuine authority to make the decisions that are necessary. We've been too long and too far without curricula in place that actually have our kids where they need to be. I know my kids are about 2 grades below grade level, and they are general ed students. They're not special ed students. I'm seeing it based on what I see in my day job, being an assistant principal of mathematics, that we are far behind where we should be. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nina Masson, also known as the other Nina. I live at 32 Fraser Place. We're not the same, you can ask Will. Thank you for the team this evening. I don't need to be a contrarian, but I did want...
Just pull the microphone away from you a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a contrarian, but I did want to say that it's not as important to me where this new position is situated, whether the position is an assistant superintendent. What is critical, and I think is a non-negotiable, at least for me, is that the position, there be clear lines of authority and accountability. I leave it to you to decide what the title should be, but what we do need is a process that is insulated from the influences that have been trying to, if not stall, undermine this entire process. The what is no longer in question. It is the why. Why are we here now, 2 years later, still discussing something that has an agenda that has been agreed upon? And let me return to Hamlet. The scene where he hires the players to come in and to replicate the scene of his father's murder, trying to entice the guilty parties to admit their guilt through their facial expression. We had that just the other day, as I understand. I wasn't present, but I watched the video. And at the time we talked about the institutionalization of structures and accountability, 3 of our administrators got up and walked out. To me, that said everything. That was the expression of culpability. So, again, as long as we need Laura Sullivan, who also deserves tenure, let me put that in, and whoever's going to be in charge of the curriculum, they need to be insulated from these influences until the spot is removed. What you call it doesn't matter as much to me, but it's got to be some insulation, and we have to have accountability. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We'll have a second public comment later, if anyone's interested in that. So on the agenda, we've got the bond conversation first, which I still think feels good. Does that feel? Yeah? Okay. So why don't we just kick off the conversation? Maureen, maybe you want to frame just where we are right now? Jen.
Hi. You can hear me? Yeah. Okay. So where we've last, or the bond scope we've been discussing includes the infrastructure work we've been talking about. And I think there's been I believe where we're at, there's many items we're in agreement. I think overall agreement on the board is an agreement about the roofing. A lot of the repointing of the building, of the PA system, the middle school auditorium, and then I think anything of the things that we're still kind of flushing out or wanted to talk about a little bit more tonight were either should we replace the boilers as opposed to what the current proposal is to retube the existing boilers, and then also I guess at Hillside, I believe there was a question, should we consider having a larger or an additional classrooms built on to what classroom the existing proposed plan? And I believe all the other work, I think that was it, because we have the music suites, everything else will kind of be intact. So those were the couple items. I think that we're still in some question or of whether we should either be going larger for what the concern is about some future growth that would allow us to have the additional classrooms. And I think Veronica had given us budget that included that 2 additional classrooms would be approximately $2 million additional cost to the project. And then the uptick from the retubing to the replacement of boiler would be approximately $550,000 to $600,000 increase. I'm saying if the board wanted to consider either at least budgeting or planning for the replacement of the boiler, the difference in what we currently have budgeted versus what some of the estimates we have received is approximately $500,000 to $600,000 additional dollars. One of the things you could consider doing would be to put money aside for the boiler, and then we could do a further analysis and then make that further decision when we were going out to bond. Whether that be to say that right now we can earmark some of the capital reserve if you wanted to do that and not, put it in the full bond scope if you wanted to do the boiler replacement.
I'm sorry, Maureen, I'm not sure I'm understanding that.
So I think right now, if you wanted to move forward saying, let's right now, for the purposes of the bond, for the referendum, go with the retubing, but if in fact between now and the having some further analysis of the boilers done, if we felt we needed to do the full boiler replacement, we always have the ability to pull that money from the capital reserve as well.
I guess what I'd like to know, because this is something that I've come back to you about.
Yep.
I'm not a boiler expert, I'm not a car expert, but I think we're in the situation of we have a car with 150,000 miles on it. Do we get a new transmission or do we get a new car?
Right.
And I guess what I was hoping to hear is I thought that we were going to be able to consult with our experts on boilers to find out what I don't know if you were the expert or if we're referring out to the people. Like, I don't know the best way to go. I don't want to throw good money after bad. Should the retubing fail in 3 years, then even if we have the money in our capital reserves, like our community member who works in the New York Public Library always says that it's better to use the borrowed money because it's a little cheaper to us. So thank you. So I just want to know, are we doing the smart thing? And I don't know if we are. That's why I keep coming back on this.
Yeah.
Should we replace the boiler? And I know that's a lot I'm asking of you, Joe.
Joe, can you come up and speak into or
Come
by
to the microphone,
Maureen?
yeah.
And kind of give us the pros and your thoughts about it and pros and cons, maybe?
So the boiler is an old cast boiler, and it's got tubes in it. It's got heating tubes in it. It's a steam system. It could be more efficient. It could be a water system, but the tubes itself are 30 years old, and they've been failing, which is normal.
Which is and what's the warranty that came on the original?
Oh, I don't think it has a warranty anymore.
No, but I'm saying that they say it would last 30, 20 years.
Well, if you
30 years.
retube the whole boiler, they say that you will, there's a good probability you're going to get another 5 years or more out of it. That's what they're made to do, to be retubed. That's a decision that we have to make, We partially retubed them last summer because there were failing tubes, and we thought we had all the water leaks fixed. And just last week, one tube broke, so we had to seal it off. We weren't able to. So we don't know what's going to happen because they're 30 years old. If you retube the whole boiler right now, then, there's a good chance it's going to last. But I don't know when these are going to fail,
Is there any reason not to just retube?
Efficiency. It's a steam boiler. You can go to hot water system.
Do you have any sense of the cost savings with a more efficient boiler, like the energy cost savings?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't, but I'm sure there's savings.
Can we really go to this bit of a tangent, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the feasibility of switching out steam when the entire building is set up for steam, radiators throughout the building?
It's not steam radiators, it's hot water throughout the building.
Okay.
It's only a steam coil. So that's it. There's a steam coil down there in the boiler room, which the boilers generate the steam, and then the hot water runs over that.
Okay.
So
it's
everything
like a
else in the
coil
building
water.
is hot water.
Yeah, okay.
Let me ask, if we think retubing is going to get us 5 years, we may or may not be doing a bond in 5 years, but do we expect that's the end of the life of this boiler if we do that?
I was told that we'll get at least 5 years, but I'm not going to guarantee that, and I don't know if anybody else will, but, they're made to do that. They're made to be retubed, so that...
Well, if we do it in the bond, we might have to retube anyways, right? Because that's going to be 2 years out, or, right? So, because we're not going to get 2 more years out of these tubes.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, too. If they're starting to fail now, which we thought we got the ones that failed over the summer, and we just had one break over last weekend, much to my regret.
Let me tell
What are you saying?
Well, my point is, we're going to have to retube whether we put it in the bond or not.
Correct.
So, let me throw this out there and tell me where my logic might be on or off. Retube now, let's put it in the bond, and, because, I'm with Lisa on this, which is, one of the things that concerns me is if something happens in 3-4 years, we've been put on alert by the 2015 Building Condition Survey, and now we don't get any emergency money on it, right? So we might as well take it now while we have it.
No, I agree.
Is there something wrong with that
No,
logic,
there isn't.
or- okay.
There's nothing wrong with that logic. And just so you know, as in the beginning of the scope of the work, we did include a full boiler replacement, and it was only because the person who works on our boilers said to Joe, these boilers are like, although they're old, retube them, you're going to get, it wasn't as though we went looking for that advice from him. It was based upon the condition of the boilers themselves outside the tubes. But to your point you just made, Joe and I had this conversation probably on Thursday or Friday, because anything in this infrastructure, many things, including the doors, there's things we felt we could not wait any longer. We hoped the boiler was, but at any time, we could potentially in a month from now have to retube them anyway, and then this conversation is, that's happening regardless. But if that were to happen, then I would suggest holding off replacing them in the bond, because I would hold the money in the capital reserve for the replacement, which you can also submit to the state and get aid on.
Okay.
It just has to go through a vote. So I think I think if we were to just say retube them now, if in the next, if that in fact happens, say you put the boiler in there tonight into the capital bond, and I have to talk to the bond council about this, and then if we had to retube prior to then, and we said, well, now we believe these will be extended 3 years, I wouldn't retube them to have them ripped out in 2 years either. I don't think that would be a smart move either. So Joe and I had discussed that, like, should we have them analyzed right now and potentially take the money either out of the capital reserve this year, do the retubing now, and then either hold off and set money aside in the capital reserve with the idea we're going to replace these boilers with approval from the state in a planned replacement in 4 or 5 years from now. So that's another way we can describe it. I've struggled greatly. Joe knows in the beginning we didn't even want to take the boilers out because of the fact that, it's crucial, and we want to be smart about what we're doing. But this also came from a recommendation of a person who does service them, and said these are, if you retube these boilers, you're going to get, a good amount, at least, like Joe said, at least 5 more years out of them. But there's no guarantee of that either.
So can you frame just the options for us that we would discuss right now?
So I think that...
On that one topic.
Yeah. So I'm struggling with this because I think that, to your point, we may end up needing to retube them prior to even being able to replace them. Right. If that were to be, if that's what needs to happen now, then I would remove them completely from the bond, set aside money in the capital reserve with the idea that in a few years from now, we're going to just do a full replacement.
And not retube them right now?
No, we may have to. I think that may just happen, like if Joe has to keep calling them back in to do a $5,000 or $10,000 replacement, we may end up coming to that conclusion, even if we don't, we'd have no other choice but to do that.
So your recommendation is take it out of the bond, do the replacement in the capital reserve,
right,
and retube now as we go.
Joe, do you think that what I'm thinking is, if we were thinking of, I think...
What does putting it in the capital reserve get us?
We have money in the capital reserves, it just gives, what I'm saying is if we have to retube those boilers before we can replace them, then I don't want to see us spend $130,000 on retubing them to, in 2 years from now, rip them out. I think at that point, if we have to do that prior to the bond coming to being able to do it, we are going to get an extended life by retubing. If we retube them to be replaced in 1.5 years, then you're wasting that 130,000 that we may, and this is kind of a
Just
recent
wait 5 years.
development. I mean, Joe literally the other day said one of the tubes is busted. I mean, it's kind of, it goes back and forth day to day, so depending upon, maybe had that not happened, the other day I may have just said, just replace them. Does that, it's difficult because of the age and the condition of them.
I guess if we said just replace them right now, where,
Well, you could technically replace them now and take the money out of the capital reserve right now
Where
to
does
do
it
it.
leave us with the bond? Is that what you're
it wouldn't be in the
It
bond?
wouldn't be in the bond.
It's just such a big-ticket item.
I know.
And replacement is 800,000, as I recall. It's
Well,
made
that's with
through
the
a bond.
contingencies and I mean, I think we had a quote from the boiler person, I mean, it was just
All right, so 600,000?
yeah, 600 and change.
It just seems that I'd love to get that through bond money,
I know.
if we could. I mean, it's,
But Lisa, she's saying that we still get aid in the capital reserve fund.
If you vote on it, yep.
If we,
If you vote,
do we get?
you get the same amount. It still has to, because capital reserve money still has to go through a process of a vote, and it still gets submitted. So as an example, we did the Cochran Gym. I submitted that to the state. That's why it took us like a year and a half to get it through, because I had to get approval from them, and I had to show that the money was, which was in the bond, it was, not the bond, in the budget, we had said, we're taking this money out for the purposes of, we detailed the reason. So you can do it.
Do we get the 42 cents
Yes.
on the dollar? Question for you, are there any other how much, I guess the question is, how much ballpark is in our capital reserves, and are there other competing projects that we might want that money for?
There are. Right now, we have 825. I've been, in speaking to the Finance Committee, when I've mentioned about having some savings this year, and we know where the different things, we didn't need to do a few buses, we had a couple kids who've moved out of district and different things. I think I've made the recommendation that I would like to see that beefed up, because last year the board authorized the account balance could be funded up to $5 million. So my recommendation this year would be to, with whatever is left over in this year's budget, to put $600,000 or $700,000 into the capital reserve to bring its balance up to 1.5, and then, to your point, if that was the case, then we could, in fact, do some boilers and then also have money for either if we wanted to do the locker rooms in a few years or some of the other projects that we are not addressing currently in the bond.
So just so that I'm really crystal clear on that, there's no way we're replacing that in under 2 years from now, right? It's not going to happen.
The boiler?
The boiler.
Well, you could if we decided today and put it out for,
But that
on the
still has
ballot
to
with the
go
budget.
But you're saying even if we decided today, that still has to go to the state.
Right, but
get
it would be like a
approved for-
year. It would be like a year. I
year,
guess. It could be a
okay.
year. Right, Veronica? What do you think it'd be sooner, because it'd be an emergency, unless we could say, yes, Veronica, because it could be an emergency replacement.
Yes, I don't understand, so you're saying replace the tubes, but isn't there an option to replace the boiler?
There is.
Yes.
No, right now in the bond, we had replacing the tubes, but of course, since then, last week, Joe came to me and said, guess what, a couple of the tubes, we had to do like $10,000 worth of work. And then we started to say, do you think that these things are going to be able to wait till the retubing would occur normally in the bond process? I guess now Veronica's going to speak about what our options could be if we declared it some type of an emergency. So I guess she can speak to that now.
It would be difficult to declare it as an emergency. It would be difficult to declare it as an emergency because it was identified in the 2015 Building Conditions Survey. However, if you decide to do it as a separate project, not as part of the bond, but just as a capital project with the capital reserves, you'd still have to vote on it, as Maureen noted. And so if you were to push that out until the May budget vote,
Which, right, that's what I was saying.
then you couldn't submit it to the State Education Department until sometime after that, and that actually delays that process. So potentially then including it in the bond gets it submitted to the state a little bit quicker and gets that review done a little bit quicker. But I think that you'd be looking at an overall schedule for replacement. If the boilers were in the bond scope, then it would be, there's potential that the boilers could be replaced the summer of 2020. But that really depends on how quickly, the engineers would design it very quickly, get it up to state. That's the whole third-party review process in order to get it out to bid really by like next January, because there's a long lead time on boilers. And it is a tight project to do over a summer, and the boilers really have to be on site right at the beginning of the summer in order for that work to be completed.
A question, if we retube out of the capital reserve, vote on that in the sequence of the bond vote to expedite getting state approval of it,
Well, that one we may not, like that, a retubing right now may just be an emergency repair, which we wouldn't necessarily have. I was thinking about the full boiler replacement. We would take time to submit, but we may just have to do it as an emergency repair.
If we retube as an emergency repair, state aid or no state aid?
Right.
It's not state aidable?
No, not if we had to do it in like quick,
All
like
right,
that
so
kind of a.
just go with me here, just so that I understand. If we retube out of capital reserves and say you leave boiler replacement in the bond and spend that money in 5 years so as to not burn
Oh,
the
that's true.
effectiveness of the
That's
retubing.
a good idea, yeah.
There's no drop
No
dead
harm in that.
date
That's
on
correct.
borrowed money, right?
That's
We
true.
get the state aid, it sits there, and in 5 years when it's time to, or 4 years, so depending on the effectiveness of the retube.
My only concern is that would have to have a separate project number, Veronica, because I don't want it to tie up the filing of closing out my old budget.
But that's not an issue, you just submit it as a separate project. I just believe you don't actually collect on the aid until after the project is complete.
Right.
So that's the only issue.
Okay,
that
so it sits
you
there.
still get the aid.
Once
That's
done-
actually might be a good solution. That's my concern. If we ended up having to invest $130,000 now, that would extend it for 5 years. I'd be concerned to like rip them out in 2020, and that's kind of where I've been struggling.
I think Tim has the winning idea here.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Okay.
All right.
Let's keep moving then. Let's keep going. Yes.
All right, what's next? What's next?
So I guess you just now want to have a discussion about Hillside.
First time deciding on a boiler has ever been applauded.
First time we've decided on a boiler.
First time we've decided on a boiler, but anyway. So, okay, so then the next set of, the next decision surrounds just kind of the size of the addition at Hillside.
Yep.
So thoughts on that topic?
Veronica, I wondered if you could just, I apologize for this, but go over again, if 2 additional classrooms were added, where would they, literally, where would they be on the design?
Oh, I didn't even bring the, I have the question.
So Megan has the floor plan, so we can show, although those 2 classrooms aren't drawn, they'll be adjacent to the
Jody, are
the
you
classroom
asking
set up
about the
there.
6 classroom plan as opposed to 4? Is that what?
We're asking about the extra 2.
Extra
Extra
2.
two.
Yep.
The extra 2.
That's a good one, Megan. So what Megan's going to point out is that if the district or the board was to choose to do a 6th classroom addition, those 2 blue classrooms on the top left, which are the 2 new classrooms on the first floor, and then there's 2 new classrooms, potentially 2 new classrooms on the lower level, right below those, right where the mouse is now, is where we would add a 3rd classroom on the first floor, and then an additional classroom right below that on the lower level.
And Veronica, what would be the price point?
Yep.
So you would extend the addition out a little bit?
About another 30,
And have a
20 to 30 feet, yep.
top and bottom classroom?
Yep, So the building addition with the cafeteria, stage, kitchen, and 6 classrooms, this is hard cost and soft costs, $10,106,585 estimated.
I'm sorry, say
Essentially 10.1 million.
10.1.
And then-
this is the current addition cost is
Yep.
8 million?
8.1, I think, right?
So it's about $1 million a classroom?
Yeah, so then, let's go back to this.
It's all based on square footage.
Why is it $1 million
Actually, I just want to answer.
classroom? Veronica?
Yeah, it's about 8.1 million for the cafeteria, kitchen, stage, and a 4-classroom addition.
So can you explain why it is about $1 million a classroom to do the extra 2 classrooms?
What we budget for with public bid projects, about $450 a square foot for construction. So when you add in the 2 additional classrooms, the corridor that gets extended with that, it works out to be approximately $1 million a classroom.
And
that is with soft costs as well. So you're adding about 33 or so percent on that. It's like, it's $1 million, but 33% of that is contingencies and soft costs.
And when you do that addition on the building, where does that push out to on the property?
It's going to push out about another 25 feet or so.
It's very slopey there, isn't it?
That whole area is sloped. We would be actually cutting into the slope, just like the existing building is now. The existing building only has the classrooms at the, the back side of it, because it is built into the slope. So we're just following what was already designed 50 years ago.
If we were to do just classrooms, just 6 classrooms, and not the cafetorium, what would you say is the ballpark price point on that? Or are we back to $1 million a classroom?
So a building addition, 6 classrooms only, about $6 million. Yep, $6,006,000. You're welcome.
I'd like us to think about having 6 classrooms as part of the addition at Hillside. I think that based on the information and feedback we're getting from the public in particular, I feel like we need to be responsive to future growth at Hillside, and also take in consideration that the support we're receiving for the bond is not only are we generally receiving, yes, we should do the work that we're proposing, but that we're not thinking broadly enough. And I think that would be responsive and responsible to consider 6 classrooms.
Lauren, I'd like to say that we may not even have, it may not even be about future growth. It may be that it continues to go up and down. But to me, having the extra space available for whatever should be decided to use it for going forward, and that could change over time and at different times, that given our needs now for space, that it just seems to me that it's a bit of a no-brainer that we add in the extra 2 classrooms to give us that flexibility. And I have no question that they will get eaten up pretty quickly. At this point, probably by just classroom needs, but it's unclear. It can be for lots of the other kinds of ideas that are being put out there. If we're in a time when our enrollment dips, that allows us to do other potential things in that space.
I agree with both Lauren and Jody. I think at our last bond meeting, I know I personally was surprised when we thought we had solved our space issue with specials, and then we found out with the plan that it might not even address that. So I think it's being responsive to what we need immediately, and I would support the 6 classrooms as well.
Are you guys saying 6 classrooms plus the cafeteria?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that.
Denisha, is that what you're saying?
I'm still thinking of it, but I definitely agree with the 6 classrooms.
I tried to do...
And just so Nisha, 6 classrooms plus the cafeteria is a different size addition, because 6 with the cafeteria is actually what? 7 or...
I'm sorry,
like 8. Is it like...
What do you mean? It's really 7. What do you mean?
It's 7, right?
It's 7.
What
Everything
are you
is a
talking
plus
about?
1.
Classrooms or...
So 6 with the cafeteria is the equivalent of a 7 classroom addition.
That's correct, because you wouldn't be taking the kitchen.
No, but
the space
we
for the
have
kitchen.
Everything is a
this
plus
is where it gets so mucky, because it's 7... Joe and Maureen were great with me. It's 7... It's the equivalent of square feet of 7 extra classrooms, but it's not 7 usable classrooms, because a big chunk of that is being used to bring the small special education rooms that are out of compliance into compliance. That was the discussion we had. But I just don't want people to think we have 7 classrooms. We can have 3 be science, we can have 1 be ceramics, because that's not that. We're talking square footage of classrooms.
Yeah, square footage, but so essentially just...
I think we need like 4 to solve our issues, so
Right.
anything you're talking
Or
about
immediate.
additionally, like your immediate
Right.
issues are probably somewhere in the 3 to 4 classroom range, so proposing the 6 classrooms would give you those 3
Yeah, I just didn't
additional,
want people to think it's a
I know,
it's a real
it gets
6,
a little
yeah.
dicey after a while. When we're talking about it.
Tim?
I'm going to defer to Jeremy before I speak.
Okay.
You were going to say.
Too late, I called you out first.
You got an applause,
You
so
got
I
the
think you
applause.
got to tell
You may not next time.
I mean, there are 2 things. One, I'm supportive of the Hillside cafetorium, and the original 4 classrooms. I think it's a no-brainer to, if you're looking at a scope this big, to add the other two. So I don't see why, especially because we've heard a lot of people saying, well, do we have enough classrooms even with this? The one thing I think is important is that, and we haven't really talked about the structure of the vote. I had originally brought up this point a long time ago about split vote. I actually think that's a horrible idea at this point, because what I've seen in the community is that there's this heavy support, and then there's people that like to say, well, my kids are going to college, I don't have any, why are you raising taxes right now? And we haven't invested enough in the last 20 years. So I don't want people picking and choosing that, well, I think the auditorium is cool, but I don't want the hillside classrooms, or I think the classrooms are great, but I think it's an all or nothing type of thing, that we're investing in the district, not in hillside or not in the auditorium. So for me, I look at this as we do the cafetorium, I can get with the 6 classrooms. We do the work at the middle school, and we do all the base, and that's the vote. It's a yes, no. And I was here for the last bond, and on the first time around, the vote, everyone knew that if you voted no, that it meant, hey, I still want new fields, but I can get another option in a couple months. I think it's really important that this is structured in a way that it's not vote no and we'll come back in 2 more months. This is the options. These are the options. We're either investing or we're not investing. And there's not a, well, I really want it, but I don't want this. There's a shared burden, and whether your kids are going to college or whether your kids are going to kindergarten, we're all investing the same amount. And the fact is, people weren't asked to invest in the last 20 years. I mean, they were given a gift. So I'm for Lauren's suggestion, but I think it's really important that people understand that a no vote is not come back in 2 months and we'll give you another option.
So if we're looking. If we're looking at 6 classrooms in the cafetorium and the boiler, it's then the total is, and correct me if it's $20,196,241. Is that okay?
Maureen, could you give us a ballpark tax estimate on what that would be? I know the current one is a 2.3% tax increase. The current 17-ish.
Right. I'm trying to think when I did the 25. Let me see if I have it.
I think the 25 was 3.3%.
It was, so it's somewhere in like the probably 7, 2.8.
2.7%, and that does not include the tax increase that happens when we do the budget in the spring.
Correct. Okay. You'd use capital.
Doug, so I just want to clarify something that Jeremy brought up. If this gets voted down, we do go back to the drawing board. Do we can?
We can.
We have to decide.
Yeah.
So that would have to come to a.
We would miss the cycle.
That full, and it would put us back a year, which I
That's right.
think is important to reiterate. If it did get voted down, we must have full year for construction.
I mean, the first vote in the last bond was a no, I want another option. It wasn't a no.
But that was a different, that was the turf.
I know, but the reason that people, was because they knew they had the option. And I think it's dangerous to do that because...
No, I hear what you're saying. I just wanted to clarify.
I think we're going to have to do a really good
is.
job communicating that after it's on the ballot, that
Especially
this is what the implications are.
And I think we all want it to pass the first round.
I have to say, I'm a
It's safe to
little
say.
uncomfortable with being up at 20 million. I'm not sure why, but it just, I think, there are people on both sides, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who came to the meetings and talked about we should be doing more, and I think we all totally understand that. There are also a lot of people who are very sensitive about the increase in taxes, and we have gotten some letters from people. Maybe not as many of those people have come out to meetings, but I don't know, maybe it's psychological, but somehow getting out of the teens and into the 20s
Seems like it's a lot.
just feels like a lot.
Well, then we could talk about adding 6 classrooms and doing, I mean, I have a whole statement. You asked us to come prepared where we were, so I wrote a statement. But we could play with 6 classrooms and maybe fix the all-purpose room and air condition and change the floor and save money on that end. I mean, there are other ways to look at it. I think classrooms are more important.
Isn't it?
But I'll read my statement. I tried to do what you said. So forgive me for reading. I've thought long and hard about all the aspects of this proposed bond. I've done a lot of research. Those of you who know me know that I love research. Talked with a lot of people, met with Maureen and Joe, studied the plans extensively. And I'd love to say I'm 100% supportive of the current proposal, but that's not where my research has led me. Here's what I do support. I fully support the repair work to the buildings, including the masonry and roof work, and I'm glad we discussed the boilers. I fully support the remediation and renovation of the FMS auditorium. The room is in a state that it should never have gotten to, with large swatches of paint peeling off the walls, gaping holes in the walls, seats that cave through when you sit on them, not to mention the presence of mold, lead paint, and asbestos. It's also come to light that the middle school has not one place for gathering when it holds an assembly. Farragut must ask the high school to use its auditorium, which is already in high use. I fully support, and I wrote this before we talked about the floor, I fully support adding more classrooms to Hillside. After much research and discussions with Maureen and Joe, it's clear that Hillside has between 5 to 6 classroom spaces that are no longer available as traditional classrooms. They are now divided into smaller service rooms for special education and other needs, or are used for the special education communication classes. This past year, Spanish lost its classroom, and next year, one option Hillside is considering is putting music on a cart. That said, I don't feel the number of... Okay, I think we've come to this decision that we need more, because if we follow the current plan, it makes us ready for today and not necessarily. So I'll leave that off. I think everybody's there. As to the cafetorium, as much as I have tried to embrace it, and as much as it would be lovely to have a full-service operation and add a second large open space, I don't see it adding enough to life at Hillside. In my many years in this district, I've literally never heard a complaint that we lack the kitchen at Hillside. I've also heard the justification that our children who receive free or reduced lunch would not be stigmatized with the cafetorium. But if that is an issue, and we haven't heard that before, but if it is, there are multiple and inexpensive ways to avoid that. I've already heard offers from generous parents who want to buy enough lunch boxes for those children so that there's no visual difference. I also heard Principal Casey's beautiful presentation as to how freeing up the cafe could allow the library to move to the cafe with the new name of Learning Commons. But to me, what created the excitement around Ms. Casey's presentation in the Learning Commons, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it was about the furniture that was put in there. Rolling bookshelves, inviting tables with chairs that can be used in innovative ways, and reading nooks. This could all be done in the current library. We've heard that the cafe is better because it's bigger. But the current library was reduced in size because 2 spaces were carved out of it. Even so, it remains at a full 1,500 square feet. If we take down one division, we could add another 750 feet, and if we take down the other one, so that already brings it over 2,000. We take down the other one, we bring it to a size that's larger than the current cafe. And the nooks in either place require construction. In addition, and perhaps most important, I can't justify the opportunity cost of choosing a cafetorium over other projects. As to process, and this is similar to a comment that we heard, we've never had a full discussion with our community and staff as to where we'd like to see Hillside 10 years from now. And I think that's critical. I'm not talking about a 2 to 3 year planning program. But we need to have conversations like, do we want Hillside to be a leader in science? How exciting would it be to build a science wing? I read about an elementary school on the West Coast with an extraordinary science wing where they collect rainwater. It comes in, they process it, they even have a river going through this. The kids have a greenhouse. They use the water to help grow things in the greenhouse. They're learning science. They're learning math. They're doing nonfiction reading. They're growing food. They're eating it. They're using it as service projects to give to their food pantry. The building is all built to LED specifications. It is so exciting. How cool would it be if we were the leaders in making the front page with Hillside? Farragut makes the front page with Courageous Conversations and Mindfulness. Our high school is out in front working with Stanford University on stress. I I would love Hillside to be that school on science. We don't see elementary schools doing it, but I hear from you. I hear science and math, what's happening? Let's build that one. But here's another idea. Do we want Hillside to excel in early childhood K-12 learning? You all hear about depression striking in the middle and high school. It's because of what Common Core has done.
Patrick.
What's happening is early childhood. You hear it. Kindergarten is the new first grade. I'll leave my notes here. We are teaching academics in kindergarten. So what if we prioritize early childhood? And it's just easier. What if we were to prioritize early childhood, and we have an indoor early childhood learning center with Legos and a creation area with boxes and strings and duct tapes and room to play and climb and imagine? All I'm saying is there are many other exciting opportunities that I think would really be what's best for your kids. Is a cafetorium great? Yeah, but to me, this is where a district like Hastings that leads should go. I also will say, I think we have one shot. I think if we do an addition, whatever it is, I don't see our community doing another addition for a generation of kids. So right now, we need to pick what we want. My suggestion is we move the vote to June, talk to our community, get a sense of where we want to be in 10 years, not design it for 2018, 2019. I want to invest in our schools, but I want to invest in a project that I think is going to take our children to new heights. Changing gears, should the board vote to move forward with the current proposal, I must say that I have heard people of my generation say that if a cafetorium is included, they are inclined to vote no. And as Maureen has shared, the masonry, the roof, et cetera, is imperative. At that point, I would opt for the two-part vote because I think anyone who will vote a one-part, anyone who will, if the cafetorium is a problem, they will vote down the entire bond, and we will lose the critical work. With a two-part vote, if you're going to vote, if you have a problem with the cafetorium, you're either going to vote down the whole bond or part two. At least by doing a two-part, we get the critical work, the masonry, the roof, we get all of that done. And finally, I did just want to say thank you. Thank you to the community for your letters, for your input, for staying here through all hours of the night. I want to thank my board mates for keeping the children's best interests at heart. I want to thank our architects, and most of all, obviously, I want to thank Joe and Maureen for their endless, endless work.
All right. I guess it's my turn. I guess I'll start by saying that I think Lisa makes a number of good points around being visionary, around thinking big, etc. I guess at the same time, and this is around the concept that Jackie raised about a master plan. I don't think the process to being visionary or a master plan in this community is in any way quick. So it brings me to a point of don't throw out the good in search of the perfect. So that's a starting thought. A second thought that I have, and this has come up in comments among the board, and it's also came up in public comment, was this idea of investing for a decade from now. We have a well-defined housing stock. It's not going to change for at least as long as it takes for the waterfront to materially change. And while we are up against what has been the highest enrollment in 20 years, I don't have a personally derived high level of confidence that that number is going to just keep going at high single-digit or double-digit growth rates, and despite discussions around birth rates. So I personally am not particularly, I'm more concerned about an albatross of an addition that we look at and say, wow, we did more than we needed than right-sizing a building that hasn't been invested in for an extended period of time. So my personal comfort level is around the plan that's been discussed at individual forums with four classrooms and a cafeteria, a net of 5 classrooms. I think that the turnaround time of vote and build makes it practically usable very quickly. It satisfies our current need. That said, if given a choice of nothing or a majority vote of the board for 6, I will clearly be in support of 6 classrooms plus a cafeteria. But my personal comfort level is around 4 plus cafeteria. Other thoughts, I don't believe that this is a generational issue. I think that we have been, I don't think that Hastings, I think that we are very unique from our neighbors in, by and large, very positive ways. I think our economic motivations and academic motivations as people is not particularly different from Dobbs, from Ardsley, from Irvington. And these are districts that manage to be on a regular bond cycle with regular investment, and the total invested in the last 20 years demonstrates that. So I don't believe we will be generational one shot. I think that we will be able to get this done, and in the period between which we get this done and when we borrow money again and reinvest in our schools, we'll have had an opportunity, if this board works together and we get strong input from the community, to do a master plan and to consider how do we fit our schools in with what will happen at the waterfront. Which again brings me back around to, I want to make sure that we satisfy the needs that we know about right now, and we coalesce around those needs and move forward. It can't be understated the degree to which this is an expensive place to live, and I am sensitive to each additional $50 a year in debt service that goes on our taxes, $100 a year that goes in debt service and goes on our taxes. And I don't think any of the other tax burdens that we experience as homeowners in this town, whether they're at the state level, whether they're disadvantageous behaviors at the federal level, all of that has to be factored. And so while I think that the $400 that we're looking at for a $17.3 million bond is really quite reasonable, it's, name your discretionary spending item, insert here. For me, it's probably, a pair of running shoes and a couple other items that I look at. But for everybody, they have their thing. But the reality is, each of the other tax obligations that we are grappling with are also need to be considered in concert. So that's where I'm at. I do strongly support the majority of the board. And I think when we're talking about 4 classrooms in a cafeteria or 6 classrooms in a cafeteria, I'm good with either, but you know where I stand. And then with respect to the vote approach, I wholeheartedly believe in, we need to, I'm going to pause and just sort of quick tangent, but it fits. Multiple residents stood up tonight to say, be brave. Say what you believe, say what you stand for, and you've elected us to do that. You didn't elect me to give you a fill-in-the-circle options. I stand for 17.3, or if the majority of the board votes for 6 classrooms and we go higher than that, I stand for supporting the majority of the board. And I'm going to put that in front of you, and I'm going to work my butt off over the next 2 months, looking to have you understand why I've done this and support my rationale. I will not support laundry list A, B, C, or D. I will not do that. That's it. That's where I come out.
Question for you? So you would support four and a cafetorium as opposed to 6 classrooms and no cafetorium?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I do think, on that front, Jody, I do think the layout of the school is better in the reconfigured plan. I do think that 2 grade levels in the new cafetorium is better. I do think that the current use of the gym and the current multipurpose is well suited. It works for the school. I don't know why we would change that up when we have this very functional option ahead of us. So, and again, I would just highlight, I'm not in search of perfect. I'm in search of really good, and I think we have really good here. And I think a lot of work, as was mentioned, a lot of work went into this. This is not a fly-by-night decision, hey, let's do this. No, a lot of work has gone into this, and I think it's well-reasoned, and that's why I'm supportive of it.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about it, and I've gone back and forth even in this conversation between 17 or 19. Right now, I mean, I'm coming out more along 4 classrooms and a cafeteria, auditorium, multipurpose room, rather than 6, for a couple reasons. And I think Tim articulated a lot of stuff I was thinking about, so no need to repeat it. But I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is we started off with $35 million on this list of wish list, you could call it. And we got it to a place of around 25 million where we felt pretty comfortable as a board. And I think the feedback at that point was it's just still too high. And we got feedback from board conversations around what could we take out. Maureen and Joe did a lot of great work figuring out how to not take things out wholesale, but actually push different things out. I know conversations from Nisha and Lisa concerned about the parking, and that came out. And I think we've done a lot of good work to get it down to 17.5. And you know, 2 months later, we're going to have to pass a budget. And, you know, at that, people, we've already heard from people in the community. I'm not thinking about this as one vote in March and another vote in May. This is my money, and this is all one big thing. So please treat it as such. I also think because of the financial crisis in 2008, we got into a place where we got off our bond cycle. And I think that weighs heavy on our minds, and I think it's left us with this sense of, if not now, maybe we won't get the opportunity again. Who knows? There may be a financial crisis and we may not, but I don't think it's a good idea to plan for it in that way. And so 17.5 feels right to me. It may not get all of the space. I'm sure at Hastings we could figure out how to fill an extra 2 classrooms. That's even at 17.5, which is I think 10,300 square feet or 10,700 square feet extra, you know, we're still smaller than square foot per kid than the other elementary schools around here. And I really want to be able to go out to the community in the next 2 or 3 months and be able to say to the people who have written to us and said, if you put $1 in, it's too much. And the people who've said, you know, we got one that said, I'm not sure why it's not $60 million. You know, I think we have to talk to all of those people, quite frankly. And to me, 17.5, it cuts the difference. It has cut some things. I would have liked to have done the parking lot. I would have liked to have put the locker rooms in there. We're going to have to figure out other ways to do that. But it feels right, and it feels like something I can get behind and something that I can sell out in the public. And I do want to say a couple thoughts because, so I've just kind of categorized of the people who wrote in and said, I'm concerned about the bond. There were three, or I have some questions. There were three primary concerns. One was my taxes are too high. I just want to share some of these and some thoughts around it. My taxes are too high, and I'm concerned about the impact of the bond on them. And what I would say to all those people is, I hear you. I get it. And I don't think anyone in this room opens their tax bill and doesn't swallow hard every time. It's probably the biggest bill we all get outside of mortgages, right? I mean, it's a big bill. And when you get down to it, we don't have a commercial base in this town, and it's just a struggle. It's what living in Westchester is. I'm sure everyone swallows hard who comes to this county, lives in this county. And so that's why, really, I've pulled back from my desire to make it over $20 million and said, you know what, let's cut. And I've been supportive of that. But the buildings need maintenance. I don't think anyone's debating that. Our elementary schools need space. Our elementary school needs space. We felt tight at Hillside for years, and we're 25% smaller than every other school in our area. And we've invested 30 to 40% of the investment of our neighboring towns. So, I don't think 17 million is too high. Another thing I've heard, a few people have shared and written in, some people have shared in comments tonight. I'm generally okay with the size, but have we done enough planning? I think as someone who does planning for a living, I think you could always do more planning. But I think we've done a lot of great planning, and this has been a year's worth of planning, as Hallie talked about. Jeremy was on that, and first week when I got on the board, I ran on the idea of strategic planning, and I sat down with Dr. Montesano, and I said, let's get to it. It's almost 3 years later, and do we have a strategic plan? We don't.
You will shortly.
And we will shortly. We're on it. But just that's 3 years, right? I mean, that's 3 years. You think getting people together to talk about how we're going to use all of our space, I love it. But I'm also a realist. And it's hard stuff. And the ideas that Lisa was sharing, I love those. Those are awesome ideas, from a science center to an early childhood center. If we're having trouble selling an elementary school to the public, selling an early childhood center, I'm not sure where that's going to fly. So my point in saying this is I think we all have to make compromises, and I think that to me, 17.5 feels like a good compromise, and the planning we've done has been good planning. On to the question of the cafeteria. I never thought I'd be talking about a cafeteria like a third rail, but it seems like that's really what it is in this town, and I'm not entirely sure why. There's probably a lot of historical reasons. And I'm just going to read some of these because I wrote them out. For me, the answer around the cafeteria lies in what the currently proposed cafeteria provides, not just in the room, but systemically to the school. What does the cafeteria provide systemically to the school? I think we're getting hung up on the fact of, do you want to put a room together where people can eat? That's not really what the cafeteria is. Systemically, the cafeteria allows for a variety of different things. One of which is it allows for us to move the current cafe out of that area, and in the middle of what is the K through 2 area, create a learning commons that's 50% bigger than the current library, something along those lines, something like that. And it's in the center of that K to 2 area, so it creates a wonderful learning space between those areas. It creates a quieter space. It is just, to my mind, good space planning. I mean, if we were going to design that now, we would much more likely design that than a cafeteria in the middle of the K through 2 area, right? So, so again, let's get off the fact that it's about a cafeteria. It's about space planning, and the cafeteria is being moved. It opens up that current and it opens up the current library for other much-needed additional classroom space. What can we use the cafeteria and the flexible space for? Sometimes I'm thinking like the word cafetorium is what's actually throwing people off. That is the issue. That's like 40% of the issue. So new name, we'll have to figure that out.
We'll name it after you.
Yeah, we'll name, well, I don't know about that. So what can you do with it? I think there's a variety of programming things. I feel like a space like that is an asset to the community as well. It's not just what can we use between lunch periods or something like that. I mean, that's something that can be used by the community. But, just a few things, and these were through conversations with a variety of people around the district over the last, month or so. Provides more flexibility in scheduling because more students could be accommodated at one time at lunch, reduces traffic flow right around those classrooms because the scheduling could be improved, creates a more equitable environment for students who get free and reduced lunch, that hot lunch obviously reduces stigma. I know Maureen mentioned at our last meeting that their lunches are often run up and down between the buildings. That wouldn't have to happen. Again, no one of these is the reason to do the investment, but taken as a whole, it creates a different reality, right? Provides additional space for assemblies so that physical education instruction would not have to be interrupted. Provides community space for family nights such as half movie night, science fair, and air-conditioned space for parent evenings, back-to-school nights. People have had questions that some of the stuff that was going to go into the all-purpose room could be moved, right? So people had questions about lost investment there, and that wouldn't be the case. And it creates needed space for after-school programs at Hillside. And if we don't build that, we'll still have to build another 2 classrooms. That's $2 million less, but it's still $6 million. So I guess in the closing thought is it doesn't seem wise to me from an investment perspective to break ground on this much-needed extra space and not take the opportunity to add a highly functional multi-use space that will provide all those benefits. It just seems silly. So that's where I stand right now.
The thing that you said that struck me the most was we're going to have another vote 2 months later, a budget vote. And just thinking about that and addressing that and dealing with that and selling that, I know I'm the person who often waffles, but I think you've convinced me to go with 17 and 4 classrooms.
I just want to respond because I didn't read my section on classrooms because I misunderstood. Here's what you get with the current bond. You get, if you stick with 4 classrooms, you get enough space for where we are today. So that means 6 sections per grade, and every special has its own classroom. Should enrollment go up? I know we don't know, we're not expecting it, it's all over the map. Should enrollment go up? Somebody's on a cart. Should on a cart. Decision that we want to have a science lab. Somebody's on a cart. That we want to have math games room where everybody can go. Somebody's on a cart. And I feel that, around the number, look, I have a lot of issues around, look, I'm concerned our budget's going to get voted down because I'm hearing, again, I'm a somewhat different generation from you guys. I'm hearing a lot of pushback on this number. But if the choice should come, it sounds like because you guys want the cafetorium, you're ready to say no to the extra classrooms. To me, you can get what you want from that cafetorium by fixing the error that was made in the all-purpose room. A floor was put down that's supposed to be good for gym, and apparently it stains. So let's either say, we're Hastings, we don't care about stains, and use it, or make the floor dark, air condition it. I think we talked about we could do all that for $800,000. Then you have that gathering place and all that. I would say we're going to keep the number down. Classrooms to me are more important than the cafeteria. Classrooms are where learning takes place. Classrooms is what's going to keep our class sizes down. It's what's going to keep Ms. Conqueror off a cart. So I just wanted to say that about the rooms.
So we're not voting tonight, correct?
No, we are. So we're not. Yeah. We're not.
We are voting tonight?
Yeah, so.
We are.
Maureen, can you just
Let me just
clarify
go
that?
through I just want to go through the process right now. So what we hope to do tonight is to actually be able to get our bond counsel and indicate, so I'd love to be able to go around and take, maybe not votes, but indications of support. Would you support this? And with those indications of support, be able to get our bond counsel a proposal that they could prepare documents, and then we would vote on that on January 7th. So that's the hope for tonight. So I am in favor right now of showing indication of support. I understand what Lisa has said, and I still feel that the cafeteria multi-use space is a good idea, primarily because the other space is also being used for physical education activities. And I believe moving that library to that space is a really wonderful opportunity from an educative perspective. So I think that there's more, we've looked at this up and down for a year, the facilities committee. It's been discussed ad nauseum regarding the different options with regards to that room and how that room is being used. To me, I think we're at a lot of good thinking, a lot of thoughtful planning, many, many hours, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it feels like we're in the right place. So I'm personally, right now, I will give my indication of support for 17, whatever it is, 17.3, I think it was, and for the proposal that was laid out before the community forum. So I'll put that on the table.
Yeah, and I just want to, again, Lisa, I think you make very good points. I think that the current state of Hillside and the progression of the current state of Hillside that has happened over the last 4 years, particularly reflecting the two large cohorts.
In terms of facilities, we're talking.
In terms of facilities, reflecting the large cohort of kids that have come in, where both of my children are in each of those cohorts, the 6th grade and 3rd grade. I think it reflects our ingenuity of using space. And as such, without having come up with the perfect, and I know I used that analogy multiple times, I will lose sleep every year as we get enrollment numbers, wondering whether or not we're going to need to deploy some of that ingenuity that our building leaders have deployed for the last 4 years. But I'd equally lose sleep over, one, disregarding the efforts that have gone into coming up with this design, which I do think a lot of people have put a lot of effort into, and I think it's quite sensible. I think it also reflects that physical education activities go on currently in that multi-use room. So in any case, I won't belabor the point. I'm supportive of the 17.3. Boom, that's my indication of support. But it's not to say that your points aren't valid. I think they are valid, and I think this is the types of decisions where we're a little bit, rock, hard place, and trying to make,
difficult decisions.
Best informed on imperfect information, and certainly no crystal ball on future.
I want to follow. Go ahead.
No, you can go, Judy. Go ahead.
Okay. I just pretty quickly will say, Lisa, I agree with what Tim's saying about I love some of your ideas. They're incredibly creative, and always appreciate all the research that you do. I think, I guess I have to give a shout out to my husband, who is a expert on Donald Winnicott, if people know who Winnicott is. He's the person who talked about good enough mothering and transitional objects. And I think we have to talk about good enough here and not perfect. And I'm with the 17 and change. And I guess one thought I do have is that if we go with this plan, and if 5 years from now, down the road, we have to do another bond, or we should do another bond, if we really find that we made a mistake, and many people have done work in their own homes, and you think, oh God, why didn't I just spend that extra $1,000? You know, if somehow we should have had the 2 more classrooms, it's not out of the question that we could push out and add 2 more classrooms, if that's something that the district needs. I think in terms of putting all the different pieces, all the variables, the wishes, the money, the need to get this done now so that we can actually have it done, that I'm with the 17 and 4 classrooms cafetorium.
I'm not going to stand in the way of majority, but I really would have, I still would, when we still have time, but I'm not going to debate it further. I really would want us to have 6 classrooms and a cafetorium. I think that the costs will only increase to add 2 because you're not having the same outlay of construction costs and other things that are embedded in those costs to put those 2 classrooms in. It will ultimately be more than $2 million to have 2 additional classrooms put in on the end. And it's not really, we need to think about the quality of the programming we want for our students and the enriching and safe and productive workplace for our teachers. And I think that the timing is overdue. And while we can't predict what the student population is, we do know that there will be learning needs. And those 2 additional classrooms, as you stated, will be used. So I know that $22 million is terribly hard to swallow, and I just, for our community, and I'm not going to stand in the way of $17 million if that's what we want to show our support of tonight. I know we're not voting, but showing support of, I of course support $17 million, and I wish we could support 22.
To go along with what Lauren...
22,
21.
With the boiler, it's, yeah.
Oh, 20 points.
No, go ahead.
Well, if we're going with the full boiler...
Yeah, that's what Veronica...
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
was going to say. So what is the number that we're talking about for...
If you go with the full boiler, you're at approximately like 17.8, 17.8, 17.9, something in that. And we'll work up the exact number, like once, if the board were to say that, then of course, Veronica, I will have to forward that to the bond council.
So I also agree with the number, the 17, that I could get behind, but my teacher heart, when I hear only 4 classrooms, just really pulls at me. And sitting at dinner with a 3rd grader who's trying to tell me a story and can't remember one of the names of the other children in his classroom because he says, there's so many of us, there's 25, and our line touches all the way to our last table. Like, as a teacher, I know when I have 25 kids in front of me versus times that I've had 19, the amount that I know my students is so tremendously different, and the teaching is different. And when you're teaching, it's about your relationships with all of the learners and all of the diverse needs that each child walks in there with. So when I think of 17, I'm comfortable with 17, but if the board feels that 17 means cafeteria and 4 classrooms, then I'll support it. But in my head, classrooms where learning is happening, where children are interacting with their teachers, all of their teachers, so that means their music teacher, their art teacher, that to me is what makes their educational experience. And so that's why I feel so strongly about the 6 classrooms. But if the board does feel that, majority says 17, but cafeteria 4, then I'll get behind that. But I feel very, very strongly about the 6 classrooms because I don't really see 4 classrooms fitting our needs right now because that floor plan has changed so many times about will we even have enough space for music or will we have enough space for, Spanish. Because despite the ingenuity of everyone with best intentions, the spaces that we did come up with now we're out of compliance, and I don't want to be caught in that we're trying to do what's best for children and we're chopping up rooms and whatever child is in there is in a room with no windows or a skylight. That to me is just, I don't want to be back there, and I know that we talked about we can do another bond in 5 years, and I agree we should get back in a bond cycle. It's healthy, it's what the business of education is, but I don't want it to be, we're on a bond cycle talking about, can we unchop up rooms that are out of compliance for space where kids don't have a window. So that's where I feel about that.
I think the classrooms without a multi-use space, because we're not calling it a cafetorium anymore. I think that's classrooms without that space is a Band-Aid, and we've been doing Band-Aids for a long time. So, I'm for the 6 classrooms in the cafetorium, or sorry, multi-use space, but I also don't want to get greedy and go out there and find out that we went a little too high. So, and I also want to move to the next conversation. So, my indication of support is for the 17, basically the multi-use space for 4 classrooms, everything in that community forum bond. If people change their mind and wanted to do the 6 on top of that, I'd be for that as well. But I think if we had to say today what we would all agree on for the vote, it's the 4 classrooms in the multi-use space.
Can I ask a question? If you're relocating the library, is that space not going to be the new music room, so you're really getting a music room plus 4 classrooms?
No, you're going into very difficult territory here.
I can answer it.
Okay, sorry.
No, I can answer it. So we're not getting 4 new classrooms. What's going to happen is basically, right now we have right now we have Spanish on a cart. So you're going to have a place for Spanish. You can accommodate 6 classes per grade, and every special has a room. And there's no extra classrooms other than that. There will be small service rooms, but so that's why I'm going to keep. That's what I was trying to say.
It used to be the library.
So the library, the current floor plans is going to be special education space in the last set that you sent us.
It is true. I mean, when we look at it, we just think, right now we were trying to lay out what would probably be where, but I think the current library does in fact then become a classroom space. It becomes actually 2 classroom spaces, because to Lisa's point, there's spaces been chopped off behind that will then be reclaimed, and then the current library becomes 2 additional classrooms. But the way that net gain, what ends up happening is we bring everything into compliance, all the specials have a room, and each section, has 6 sections, right? Correct. Yep.
But the rest of special ed, I think we would have 2 communications classrooms.
Right.
But if we get another communication classrooms, then somebody's on a cart.
Right. I mean, I don't think that would be, I guess that could happen, but, right. And I think there may be 1 classroom from year to year that may switch off.
I don't think we want to get too much into that. Yeah. That's fine.
That's why it's very confusing though when we talk about
I think we have a way.
Let's move on.
So I just want to go around and officially just make sure everyone says they're indicating support for 17-3 or whoever does. I know not everyone. 17-8 or 9, whoever does. Can I just...
With the boiler, Doug, right?
That's with the boiler. So it's 17-3 plus 5,600 for the boiler.
For the ballot, you'll have the exact.
Okay, so Jeremy, you support that? Lauren, you support?
I support it.
Support it. I support it. Support it. Support.
I'm sorry, are you just asking for the comfort with the number or what's in it?
What's in it? So the proposal of 17.3, which we've seen, plus the 600,000 of a boiler.
I'm not going to hold up the board, but I don't think it's enough classroom space, and I think, again, I think that we could come up with I'm not looking for perfection either, but I'm looking for an enhancement of learning. So I would strongly prefer something that I think really goes directly to learning. So I don't support the cafeteria. Again, I'm not going to hold up the majority.
Okay.
And are we talking 1-part or 2-part vote tonight, or is that?
Well, we can. Well, we have to talk about it tonight so that it's clear. So why don't we go around and just indicate support for that? I support a 1-part vote.
1-part vote's the only vote I would support.
I'm also for a 1-part vote.
1 part.
1 part.
1 part is fine with me.
Okay.
True to form, I'll be the contrarian. I support it too. That's I won't vote.
Okay. So it sounds like we have kind of 6 to 1 indications of support, not official vote yet. we'll drop the bond referendum documents and get those for vote on January 7. Okay.
Great.
Okay, moving along. So we want to move on now to talk about the central office.
You did a great job.
Yeah, okay. 5 up. What's that? Okay.
Wait, Jody's not back.
She's not here, but she'll wander in. We'll just. Okay. So for the board, we want to kick off talking about the hire at the curriculum level. I think the question on the table is, what level is this position hired at? So just so everyone's on the same page, it's currently in the budget. It's somewhere around $160,000, is that it? 170. As a director of curriculum instruction, there's been some conversations about hiring that role at an assistant superintendent role, which will probably increase the budget some. No, he's there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's there.
He snuck back in. Sorry, Pat. Sorry.
I don't do anything without Patrick.
Okay.
And so it'll add something, we're not sure, to the budget. So with that, I'll just throw it out to the board. Thoughts on the topic of hiring at a director level or assistant superintendent level? I will say there's another conversation I know people are interested in, which is where do these sit structurally? And we're going to come to that at the end of this. I don't know that that is going to be, we'll discuss that after we discuss this part of things, is all I can say. The question is, where do these, where does this position sit? So just to clarify, because I think some people might not be clear. Currently, if you look at our current org chart, and that's the one that you sent me, Maureen, correct? That's the current one. That's the current one. It is, the position is shown at the same level as the building principals and the director of special education and the director of curriculum are all at the same level.
That's when the position was a director position.
Okay. That's when the position was the director position.
Okay. Yeah.
Just so that we're really clear on all the details here, the position last year was in the administrative union. So they would bargain with that person in their union, which is the administrators, its principals. That position has been taken out of the administrators union and currently is not in the administrators union. And also, just so we're clear, that position as a director can still be above the principal level, or whatever you want to call it, be at the cabinet level without being called an assistant superintendent of curriculum. So that can still be a director level and not assistant superintendent. So realizing that that position can really be anywhere now, it's no longer in the administrative bargaining unit. The question on the table is, do we look to hire where it currently sits at director of curriculum, or do we look to hire at assistant superintendent of curriculum?
I have a question. If it were an assistant superintendent of curriculum, would that person be over the director of special education? How do you have that triangle? What is the relationship between the assistant superintendent of curriculum and the director of special education?
Can I respond to that?
Well, I mean, as
Charlie might start.
stated, you could put that director position also at the cabinet level, but I think it's very important, whatever the nomenclature, that the definitely, and I've gotten input on this from a lot of the public. You really need an assistant superintendent. I think it would give it the authority. I think it would really help to get things done. It would be oversight of the special ed, which is actually, does require a lot of skill and knowledge, as well as the great needs in, with respect to curriculum and instruction. And I think you would have that position to really get the ball rolling. You've heard tonight, and I've been hearing it all since I got here, that this district needs a sort of a little a startup to get going, and that's what you need. I think is a dynamic oversight as well as everything else to get the kind of curriculum instruction, the programs that you really want.
Charlie, sorry, maybe I just, but
These are the folks that have been talking to me. These are the folks that have been talking to me.
You
They know.
I'm sorry, but I don't know if I got the answer. So would the director, what would the relationship be in a hierarchical structure between the director of special education and the assistant superintendent of curriculum?
Well, I mean, you've got choice.
You have to decide, yeah.
Whatever you have to decide that.
I would like to propose.
I would give that position a lot of authority too, and oversight.
Then we need to talk about what this would...
So, you know what, I don't agree totally that it... I think we have to think about what's best for the district from a pedagogical perspective.
Which I think would also.
And I think, my proposal, I guess, would be that I am in favor of hiring an assistant superintendent. And I say that in part because I think it is really important that we attract someone who has a lot of experience, both in education, in curriculum, and in leadership. And that person would report to the superintendent, and all of the principals and the director of special education would all report to the assistant superintendent. And that person is out of their union, and they're all in the same union, so that works. And I think it would be, one of the important things would be for that person to work with that whole group of people as moving forward in all the ways that we've heard about tonight and that we've talked about and we know. And I actually think, maybe contrary to what a lot of other people think, I actually believe that the principals and director of special ed would all go along with that and do not have a problem with that.
I agree with everything you said, except I would clearly put the superintendent, what do we want to call it, director, superintendent, assistant superintendent rather, of special ed, would have authority over the principals.
I'm not in agreement with that.
Listen, because that's the reality.
Of course.
We have principals who are not doing what they should to implement.
Charlie, I think that would be... I believe strongly that the job of the assistant super...
Please listen, Julie. These folks know
when you want Chinese food...
Go ahead.
I'm listening, Charlie, but I'm telling you that I don't see it that way. I think that you get a person in as the assistant superintendent, and it is their job to work with all of those people and to get them to work collaboratively with each other. And
I respect it.
I am not in favor of the director of special ed being over the principals. I don't see the org structure that way.
Look, I think if I could just jump in here a second. I think there's two different conversations here. There's an organizational structure conversation, and then there's a conversation about people who are in roles filling that organizational structure. And I think when they get conflated, it's going to get very charged. And that's one of the reasons why I think we just need to step back from this conversation a little bit. Let's have the one conversation about the curriculum role right now. And I think the one thing that we're all aligned on is that role is outside of the bargaining unit. That's a fact. That role should be at a cabinet level next to the superintendent. You know, that's something I think we're all alignment on. And now the question really on the table is, what level do we hire that person at, and what do we feel? So if we could just talk about that one topic now, we can come back to others.
Can I ask a question about that topic? So, because what I'm hearing is no matter what we decide to call it, it's having, in the hierarchy, power over the director of special ed and the building admin. Now, in the differences of names, is it because it's a different need of certifications? Like, is one a building certification? Is one, district-wide? Is that where the difference in the name is coming from?
You need district certification.
For both, correct?
Yeah, for both.
Okay.
And you know, there are all kinds of ways. Look, the school district I came from, we had an assistant superintendent for, actually, for the special education. But you do need, and again, please, I respect Jody. I don't mean to be disagreeing with you.
We can disagree.
I do think that you have to understand that there's a great deal of frustration because you have sometimes principals that like the status quo. And when you try to change that and you have nobody who has authority over them, or the principals might do things like they won't give access to the special ed director to the kids, or they clearly, and another big problem is that special ed directors are not allowed to evaluate these students, that only the principal in some cases will do that. This is out of whack. If you want to really, you will give the authority to the special ed person. That's simple.
Wait, but we're not talking about special ed.
Yeah.
So my question was about the curriculum position, Charlie. So I'm sorry if I worded that.
I think both are being discussed.
But I thought we just
right
said
now,
that we're
yeah,
just
right-
talking about curriculum.
Right now, I think we want to let's
just
focus on curriculum for now. And
So I'm sorry if I worded it incorrectly, but.
No. I think there was good discussion going on about curriculum as well. And I think, and I'm very pleased that Jody and others have supported the assistant superintendent concept, which we know so does the public. And I think that's clearly the way to go as far as just curriculum instruction, as well as what you need to do for the other.
No, so I maybe it's to you that I should be asking this. I'm just asking for the difference between the two so that I could clearly understand that.
Director or AS, yeah.
Of curriculum instruction versus an assistant super of curriculum instruction, if we've already said that it is housed outside of the admin union. So can you explain that to me?
Well, the admin union that's been referred to, that covers the principals.
Okay.
And then anybody else would have a district responsibility.
No, actually, Director of Special Ed is in that admin unit, as is the director,
As of now.
Jesse Merchant.
As of now.
But the Director of Special Ed, it has all our directors in it and all our principals and assistant principals. So Jesse Merchant is in it, Laura Sullivan is in it.
Talking about changing.
Yeah, well, so
No,
I
you were
think
saying who's in
I
the
think
union.
I can help
It's just
clarify.
principals. It's more than just principals.
I think Nanisha's
Those positions would not be proposed
Very little.
to be
It comes down to very little.
Money and experience. Money and experience. So to answer Nanisha's question, it's money. It's money.
Money.
And it's level of experience or years of experience.
And title.
Okay, so I
Is-
mean,
is it-
I would prefer to have someone with more experience
Yeah.
in driving curriculum and instruction, and I think what the missing piece that we've been having is someone to elevate the type of instruction that we have in here. So I think if the only difference is money and experience, then I would support the assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction.
Thank you, yeah. So let me just share my thinking around this topic. Obviously, it's a charged topic. One, my thinking on this topic has evolved. I joined the board in November of 16, I believe. And I don't think that I appreciated the importance of it not being part of the bargaining unit, of having responsibility, authority over principals and directors as such. With the passage of time, I think from my perspective, it almost goes without saying that this position needs to have authority over principals. I agree with Jody in this regard around, well, let's even just table that point for a second. The person needs authority. When you get to the issue of needing authority, I think, provided we have the money in the budget, the best pool of candidates with the deepest level of experience would come at the assistant superintendent level. There is a major caveat here, which is this role is going to have very high expectations within this district. It's important to note for the audience that this role has not been successful in this district for, either being a long-term employee or making long-term difference for probably the better part of 6 to 10 years, which means our responsibility in the 10 plus, fine, yeah. So in any case, it's been
we've really struggled to make it successful, which puts a great deal of onus upon us to find the right person, number one, who, despite all of the discussion around different roles and responsibilities throughout the district, I think it's very important to, at least to share my opinion, this role requires the buy-in of our building leaders, of our principals at all three buildings, of the director of special education, and with the appropriate buy-in of those individuals, this person, provided it's the right person and the right leader, ideally, and with the right support of the board and the right support of the superintendent, this person ideally has the ability to bring what have been at times disparate individuals, disparate buildings together and work functionally. But the role and responsibilities of this person are very, very high. So staying off the topic of special education for a moment, just around the assistant superintendent discussion, I think it's very, very clear, at least to me, that it needs to be an assistant superintendent role, and that the screening process will be very, very rigorous. And, you know, as such, I can't guarantee that if we turn out and we get this position advertised as quickly as, you know, after the holiday break, that it's a quick, and this is something I want to be clear on with the community as well, this may not be a quick 2-month turnaround. We have the right person. This is, I think this role is, we've had multiple superintendents. This role, I think, is even more critical than the superintendent role because of the expectations that we all collectively hold for this role. And so I hold us to a very high standard to find the right person. And if that means it takes a long time to find that person, so be it. We want a really excellent person in this role. Those are my thoughts on it.
I keep coming back. I know, Doug, you want us only to focus on the director or assistant sup of curriculum, but everybody mentioned Dr. Katzman. I pulled this up, and this is why I keep asking this. Dr. Katzman was really, really clear. She's got this chart here. Everybody can see it. It's a triangle. And it has the director of special education, the director of curriculum on the same level. That's why I keep asking the question, what's going to happen with the director of special education? And our answer is, well, we'll deal with that later. I don't know how we can have this decision being made now.
Tonight. I don't think it's after tonight.
Oh.
First, let's decide assistant or director, and then let's talk about...
Oh, if we're deciding tonight.
Isn't that right?
That's because I don't know how we have... Well, but I can't make the assistant.
Can I weigh in?
I need to know what's going to happen.
Can I talk?
We're trying to do what Dr. Katzman
Lisa's
said.
talking, please.
I would agree with Katzman, and I'd like to see both of those positions up at a higher level.
Can I weigh in, or?
Maybe
you've got 3 times.
thing to do is
Hold on,
decide the
Lisa.
assistant position for curriculum.
Okay, well then, okay, I can give you more thoughts on that. I also support an assistant superintendent of curriculum, but in a more conservative manner. As you know, I like to do my research. This is attached to the agenda. I looked at other Westchester districts that I consider similar to us. The big driver is size. When you see a lot of assistant sups, you're in a bigger district. So I looked, we're about 1,500. I looked at schools under 2,000. I did include Ardsley, it's a little over 2,000 because it's a river town. And I looked at schools that were similar in achievement to us. So that's 10 including us. Of the 10, 5 of them have full-time assistant sups. The ones who don't are no slouches. Briarcliff, Bronxville, Edgemont, and I forget the other one. Oh, Rhinebeck has a part-time assistant sup.
Lisa, just to be clear, do they have any assistant sups or just not assistant super curriculum? Bronxville, for
Everyone
example.
has an assistant superintendent.
Every district, with the exception of ours, has an assistant superintendent for everything that's non-educational. It could be called an assistant sup of business facilities and operations in Ardsley. It's an assistant sup of finance and operations in Briarcliff. Assistant sup of finance facilities operation in Dobbs. So everybody has sort of for the non-education.
And half of them have one for curriculum.
Half have one for curriculum, half don't. But what struck me, and this is where I'm a little more conservative, and I've been here longer than a lot of you, because I've been here through all 4 superintendents. What 4 out of the 5 did is they took somebody who was already working for them. So say in Dobbs, they promoted their director. So what I would say, Ardsley as well, thank you. what I would say is I support the position, but I've seen 4 people not do well in this position, 4 good people. And what I've seen us do in the interim is we fixed a problem. There was a reason, at least part of the reason why it wasn't working, because I talked to Roy Montesano about this, former superintendent, and he said, as I said, we're all missing a layer. We didn't have our coaches and our specialists. Last year, we hired a math coach, we hired a literacy coach. So we're filling that in. So I would say taking a more conservative approach, hire somebody as a director. If we get a lousy pool, then we can do this again. But let's put out for a director. If we like that person, then we promote it. And I will say, I checked, I'm really nervous about money. We're putting out an expensive bond. When you get, again, to my generation and up, it's expensive. This is an expensive position. The last time we had this, in 2016-17, the budget said our actuals were $191,000. So we're looking at over $200 plus a benefits package. So in a year when we're floating the biggest bond that's ever been floated in Hastings, we're at our greatest level of income disparity that we've ever been. I'm a little nervous to go with big bond and big new position. Again, I support the position, but I say let's test drive somebody. Let's see how they are, and then promote.
With building, so are you also saying test drive that person and also look for a building, that other position that you talked about?
If there's somebody from within, that we can talk about. I don't know that anybody's expressed interest.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Can I weigh?
Then
Okay,
all I'm
hold on,
saying is
everyone,
let's hire.
please, guys, we can't have everyone.
I'm saying we should look for a director, and if we like that person, promote.
So I agree with a lot of the comments that we've heard. I came onto the board 6 months ago now, and to be honest, I don't know why you guys didn't figure this out 2 years ago when you were the president. I don't know why it took this long after the audit. I mean, the fact is, there's structural issues in the way that we've been doing things. Titles matter. The fact is, if you want the best people, and where I work, we get the best people, and you get, for that extra $20,000, you get a lot for your investment. And if you want the best people, the best people care about titles, and they also care about the reporting structure. And the fact is, this hasn't worked, and it hasn't worked for a lot of different reasons. But we need to try something different. The assistant superintendent, one, to Charlie's point, it attracts better candidates. I do agree with Tim, we have to get it right, but I don't think that we need to beg the principals to buy in. I think they should buy in. I mean, the fact is...
They will buy in. I don't think that's an issue. And I didn't use the word beg, but I think that they are...
They will buy in.
They have... But there's a... For all of the issues that we have, the schools have been pretty good, right? And they are accorded... They are accorded the respect to be part of the process.
True, but the fact is that, if there's one person that doesn't work out, I get it. 2 people. When 3 people don't work out, people that have been in the district as leaders, at a certain point, the onus is a little bit on them as well. So as true leaders, they should be excited about the fact that maybe there's a person that comes in that takes them to the next level, right?
And in my conversations, they are.
And they are.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that they are.
To be very clear.
I don't think anyone's talking about them not being in the process of it as well. Right.
Yeah.
So, just to throw that out.
Yeah. So I also think we need to give the person time. So the fact is that, Lisa brought up 10 years ago there was a petition. We brought up this assistant superintendent. There was a petition. And I think this is really important for the community here, the community that's, watching on, on the video, if anyone watches. The thought that you can change the direction of where the board is going based on a petition, I think those days have to be over. The fact is that we put a lot of effort into thinking through these. If a board wobbles because 400 people sign a petition without their names on comments, the fact is that's not how you run a district. So I think it's important to just recognize that, we put a lot of thought into this. We're making decisions, and I would hope that the rest of the board has backbone to say, these are the decisions that we made. So if, I don't know if it's on this, or maybe there's something else in 2 months about something else, if there's a petition or if 50 people show up, the fact is that it's not like we just come up with these decisions just sort of we'll just show up and make up our minds. So I'm very supportive of the assistant superintendent of curriculum role. I think that it is probably the most important vote that I've had in the 6 months that I've been on the board. And I think it sets a tone in terms of that we have a vision across all 12 grades.
Jeremy, are you going to say something? Go ahead. No, go.
I've been thinking a lot about this, so I put some thoughts down. And I think the level of the position is essential in assessing the work that needs to be conducted and the implementation of change and improvements that will affect teaching and learning for all students in our district. I've been a parent involved in Hastings schools since 2013, and our district has essentially been reactionary and without curricular vision or cohesion, and this was my primary impulse for my own involvement in the board. It's imperative to hire an assistant superintendent of curriculum. As things stand, our students bear the burden of inconsistent and lack of curricular leadership. The class who entered Hillside in 2009, which is the same year the last time the board attempted to implement an assistant superintendent level of curriculum, are our current 9th graders. They're the first class to have the New York State grades 3 through 8 testing comprehensively aligned with the Common Core standards. That class, who are kindergartners in 2009, have lower academic performance as indicated on the state tests. For example, the class that entered Hillside in 2009 scored 52% proficient in mathematics on the state math assessment last spring in 2018 as 8th graders. At the same time last spring, the 3rd graders taking their version of the state math test scored 85% proficient. That disparity, in my opinion, is a reflection on the district's lack of curricular leadership. We have building leaders scrambling and trying their hardest to react to new standards, and without consistent overarching leadership providing pathways and direction, comprehensive professional development, and effective child-sensitive methods, we continue to shortchange some of our students and then seem to get it right as the scrambled for and ad hoc practices become routine. Our students deserve leadership that has the experience and oversight to keep practices attuned to our diverse learners and can make them excited about learning and find joy in it. An assistant superintendent is the proper level of leadership our district requires.
Thank you for that. I think that was really excellent.
Very good points.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said, Jeremy. I don't think we should go down the path of lumping together the reasons why all of the past people failed, because I think that's a mistake, because I think each of them, there were probably different. Having lived through them all, I could tell you I don't think they were all for similar reasons. And having been on the board for a long time, I think it's been a struggle over time, in part because of the money, to want to support a higher level of a position. Of course, it is hard. We're talking about the bond, we're talking about all of this, but it seems to me that what has changed over time is that there's a lot that's changed in the district and that there's a lot of need. And I really, really think that it's just pretty obvious that we really need someone at the level of assistant superintendent and I don't think, and I guess I say that in part, Lisa, because in terms of your looking at other districts and other districts that are like us, I actually don't even think that we can or should compare ourselves to other districts, because we have our own issues, our own history, our own things have gone on, our own needs, and I think that this is what, whereas in the past I would have always gone for a director, and did, I really feel like, given what our needs are now, we really need someone at that, in terms of who we can attract and who we need, I think it has to be at the assistant.
I'm with you on the assistant soup. It's the process. It's not the outcome, it's the process.
Yep.
Well,
What do you mean?
She's just talking about that they get promoted up as opposed to hired in.
Yeah, and that's where we have like.
It's great if you have the people in-house. Sometimes those people have to be nurtured and developed.
No, I'm saying if we would hire that person to be in-house, test drive them for a year, with a promise of promotion if it's been a good performance.
Okay, hold on, everyone.
I think that's a whole organization, that becomes a kind of an organizational...
Okay, hold on. I'm the only one who hasn't spoken. Let me say something, because this is all exactly what I want to talk about. The first thing I want to do is acknowledge the principals. I understand in this process that they become somewhat of a punching bag, and I understand how unfair that is, and that with all of their effort, and every one of them's got a whole bunch of amazing things, and everyone's got faults, just like all of us. And when those faults get caught up and magnified, and then they get strung up in public, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. And so I think we've all had challenges with a variety of different people in our workplaces, and we've all found great things about all of them as well. And I just really want to take the time to acknowledge their excellence, energy, and the effort that they put in. The other thing I think that comes up quite a bit is this idea of who has power, who has authority over. And I don't think we hear enough about collaboration, which is, as someone who comes from the private sector, you just don't hear a lot of talk about power and authority anymore. It's just that's not how people operate anymore. I mean, if you operate that way, you get bounced. It's an old command and control style of working. It doesn't really work. And I do think that the person that we look to bring in, has to have, when we were looking for superintendents last year, I kept talking about this triangle of intelligence: social, emotional, and intellectual intelligence. And I think that, or let's use the idea of a stool. I mean, you get two legs of a stool, you start having some real problems. Interestingly enough, I think you can get away with the intellectual one lower than the social and emotional one, especially in our district right now, because I think as long as you're really pretty good at that, okay, the social and emotional, sometimes you just can process and get the process going. But anyways, let's get all three if we can, right? Social, emotional, intellectual intelligence. A couple of things about, so my thought about hiring a director and getting them up to an assistant soup is, it feels to me it's like trying to jump a chasm in two jumps. I mean, you're not going to make it. And I think that we have enough challenges that I want someone that's had the pattern recognition, that's got the scars, that's seen it, that will know, you know what, that's a bad path to go down. I don't want them to wander down it for 6 months and go, that doesn't seem to be working out. I think that's part of the problem of what's happened with some of our other ones. They haven't seen enough times, they haven't been around the block enough times to know what can work and what can't, and to really read the signals. So I think it's absolutely essential that person is hired in with a pretty good depth of experience. Interestingly, I reached out to the search firm that's doing the recruiting for the superintendent, and I just said, what is your experience of people who take these roles? They told me that in the last couple ones they've done, a lot of sitting assistant soups actually apply for these roles. So it is for a lot of assistant soup.
Assistant soup.
Apply for assistant soup. For a lot of assistant soups, it's a terminal role for them. They really enjoy that work, and they have no desire to become a superintendent. And so they're maybe looking to shift districts, or they're looking to move up. So I think we definitely can get access to that pool, first of all. And I think really experienced directors aren't looking to jump to another directorship. They're looking to make their jump to an assistant soup. So I think we tap into that one. I think the pool that we get if we start looking for directors, I think this district will eat them alive. I'm going to be just totally honest with you about that point. So I think it's a bad idea. The money thing, I think is kind of penny wise and pound foolish to not think about investing that money, because I think the lost productivity focus and the impact on our kids, if we want to put a price tag on that, I promise you it's way above $40,000 or $50,000, whatever it comes out to. Now, having said all that, I think we still have the opportunity to mess up a hire of assistant superintendent of curriculum. I mean, I think we have to be really careful that this is not like, this isn't the savior that's going to come in and sprinkle a bunch of pixie dust and all the problems are going to be solved. And I think we need to be, what's that?
And it will take time.
And it's going to take time. And they watch all these videos, so there's that too. So, I think when we think about it, we need to think really a lot. I think we need to think about, and this is something I've always questioned about. I've never tried to hire an administrator in a school district before. I know some people on the board have done it. I know Lauren was an administrator and she's done it before. Obviously, Charlie's done it. But I would love to know a little bit more about our interview process before we hop into another interview process. I have a sense there may be some challenges with it. I don't know that for a fact. It's just a gut sense that I have. And, I want to be really clear about how we're going about interviewing before we just hop into a process. Like a couple questions on the table, for example. Do we use a recruiter? Do we do a posting? What are the pros and cons of that? How do you set up the interview? How do you set up the rubrics that we're measuring efficacy on? Can we use a social, emotional, intellectual rubric as the to measure efficacy? Have we done that before? Has it worked? Hasn't worked? I mean, I want to know these. And in many ways, that is really the most important part. It's the hiring is the most important part because you can get bad hires at every level. So my support is for the assistant soup for all those reasons. So I think we're at a place where we can probably kind of take a vote. By a show of hands, who is up for hiring assistant superintendent of curriculum?
Good.
What's that?
Start looking effective immediately.
Yeah. So as far as looking, we can hit that process.
Well, we have to agree on the org structure to look. It has to be part of the job description.
Well, we have already done a tremendous amount of work on it, and not to say that we can't do more, but we've got materials ready to go.
Doug, do you not want to have a discussion about the organizational structure?
No, we can. I guess there's maybe then two conversations. One is about org structure. The other is about the actual hiring process. I mean, I don't know enough about whether it's recruiter-led and the results.
I don't think it has to be.
I think obviously you need a recruiter, I think, for the superintendent's position, which you already have in here.
Right, but I don't think you need it for this position.
I think the assistant superintendent has a lot of applications, a lot of choice.
Okay.
Now that you've decided to go with that title.
Okay.
Doug, it might be worth a call to BOCES to ask what they do on this.
Okay, yeah.
Good idea.
Could be. But let's plan on doing it as a posting. So then, as far as the structure goes, can someone frame for me the exact question on the table as it pertains to structure right now? So we have an assistant superintendent intended to be hired at a cabinet level, and then the follow-on conversation?
I think the question is, in the report from Dr. Katzman, she set forth what she called her central office organizational structure with the superintendent and then a drop-down and a director of special ed and a director of curriculum, and her boldface under it. I think what she was getting at there is that the director of special ed was lowering herself because she was doing too many CSE meetings. So it says, the director of special ed should have responsibility of district-wide systematic planning as it relates to special education. However, her role and the role of the supervisor are predominantly focused on facilitating CSE meetings and writing all IEPs. So it sounded like she wanted her I'm not quite sure how that gets this, but she has a triangle. There it is, where
So
they're at
Lisa,
the same
to
level.
me, that's about just being clear about the roles, about roles, and about the director of, and we're not talking about individual people about this at all, but about the person who's the director of special ed, what their role is. Like, do they go to CSE? I mean, I think that's about defining of roles.
I agree. That's why the narrative is a little off from the graphic, and it's a little unclear. So I'm not quite sure how the narrative plays into the graphic plays into our hiring decisions. So that's what I can throw out there, and I don't know the answers.
Well, from my discussions with her, I think she's concerned that she wants to see active individuals working collaboratively with the principals in each school, and that they would have an appropriate place in working with the children, and that they would also be leaders of the program. And I think that both are equally important. And I think that's really what we're talking about, is sort of an expanded amount of coverage that would be required to be working as much in the buildings as in district office. And with everything else that has to be done.
Mm-hmm. So, Charlie, with all due respect in terms of your thinking about this, I guess where I see it differently is that in sort of the terms of the org structure, you know, I think one of the problems is that we have lived too much in silos here. And so to me, I think if you get an assistant superintendent who has experience and who can work and be a leader, it seems to me that it's incumbent upon them then to work with the principals at each school and with the director of special ed, and then to ensure that they're all working together.
Okay, again, I think maybe I'm getting it too mixed up. I'm not talking about the assistant superintendent. I think that's pretty well settled, but I think we've moved on to what happens with the director of special ed.
Right, and I'm saying that I think that should be on the same level as principals, and they all report into the assistant superintendent.
I think they should be a level over the principals. But what I wish the board could do, is wait for the strategic plan, because this will be discussed from all sorts of perspectives that I've been hearing from people and so on. And I think then you'd be in a better position, you'd be better informed to decide that. You don't have to decide. I mean, tonight you've already made a lot of decisions. You're going to be tiring out of decisions tonight. You don't have to make this one again tonight. I think it should be an ongoing discussion in terms of what, if any, changes should be made there. But I think that the main decision to be made tonight, of course, and this issue is the assistant superintendent. But I think that there will be a good discussion to follow. We don't have to do it, you know, we can say 11 or 12.
Exactly.
I think we would be better looking at it fresh. And again, I can give you a lot of backup on that from the strategic plan.
Yeah.
For fresh consideration on another night.
Yeah.
Got a lot to do.
No, I think that's right.
It's not built.
I like that suggestion. I mean, the fact is, this position's not going to be hired in the next month, so, I mean, we do have a little time. But I mean, I would love to hear your feedback. I think Katzman was pretty clear about, I mean, if you watch the video, she was pretty clear about what she was saying works in most districts. You know, I mean, I look at Charlie's advice as well as, you know, where Katzman was saying, look, the special ed department, not an individual, the department should be in that sort of, you know, triumvirate, making curriculum decisions. So I hear where you're going with your sort of org structure, but yeah, I think what Katzman laid out, based on her many years of experience, probably you know, probably the direction that makes the most sense based on what seems to work. I'd love to hear you know, Charlie's advice when we come back in January or late January and talk about this deeper.
And you see, I've had experience with the assistant superintendent that is also the head of special ed, and it does give, it's a very good way of doing things. But there are other models, too, that I think should be all shared and considered in time.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to just realize that it's an ecosystem, and I mean, we're looking at like 3 boxes on a page, and that's, you know, I mean, I know for a fact if one of the people, for example, who put their hat in the ring for our superintendency, you know, last time, maybe this time, I don't know, you know, has a very deep special ed background. Right. So I think the dynamics can change a lot depending on who's in those roles and boxes. So, you know, I know that everyone would love it really crystal clear right now, right. But I think we've taken, you know, a lot of ground tonight, and, you know, we should probably revisit this, realizing that it's not just going away, but it's a discussion we'll continue.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I guess I know, in the interest of time, I could not agree more. I think it is, an ecosystem is a very key word. I think that I think we've made a very positive step in terms of coalescing around the importance of the assistant superintendent role. And now I think it's quite important to see what kind of individuals and what skill sets those individuals bring, and then work sort of in harmony with that role, and have the appropriate org chart for Hastings, not that which is in a series of, And I might add one other thing that comes to mind, which is Dr. Katzman is a phone call away. As we are getting this position in place, I consider her to be quite viable as consulting with her around this is what we're thinking, what are the pros, what are the cons, et cetera. She has quite a bit of detailed background with our district at this point. So those are my thoughts around it.
Okay. So I think we can move on from this conversation now. If we can, maybe we'll move through the business items and other items fairly quickly, and then if there are some further comments, I would imagine there would be another comment period in 5 or 10 minutes if people are interested, just to give you an idea. So, business items 4A, I hope I have the most recent one here. 4A, does anyone have questions about those business items?
No.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Yeah, I had a question. I'm sorry. Where are we, 4A?
4A,
Okay.
1 through 11.
No,
I'm fine.
you're good? Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay. Can I have a motion to take items 4A, 1 through 11?
So moved.
A second?
I had one question. I had a question for Maureen on the budget transfer.
Sure.
Because it related to the facilities conversation. There's a budget transfer of $125,000 for the LED lighting upgrade contract, but we had talked about $140,000.
Because there was some money in that code already. Now, I'm having you approve the budget transfer tonight, but the contract for that was not ready, so we needed $140 in total. Joe had some money available for the offset of that.
Okay. Can I get a second to approve? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Items 4B, placement for services for CSE and CPSE.
I'm going to ask that we table that vote because we didn't have the attachment to it. Normally, there's an attachment that shows us what services each child will get, not with names, but I think it is worthwhile for us to look at that, and that tells us if there's, the busing implications and all
What's
that.
that?
executive content.
Normally, it's, what, so it was only...
I just noticed it now when I scrolled
Okay, so can we, is there an urgency to this? Because I wasn't able to see it. Yeah, so it didn't make it, wasn't able to review it. And I don't know if anybody else was able. If it's urgent, we can vote on it, but if not, I think it would behoove us all to read the attachment.
I don't know why they put it.
Okay.
It's out there.
Yeah, I know. No, it's the first time I've ever seen it not be there.
We were putting a bunch of.
Yeah, it's not a matter of who did it. It's just it impeded our ability to review it, to be prepared.
Is there a problem with postponing that till Jan 7 or not?
Sorry.
If there's an urgency, let us know.
I mean, many times we're approving them retroactively anyway, quite frankly, I think, so I think it would help.
Okay, so just remember to keep that on. Okay. So 5A, resignations. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Let's just actually do 5A, B, C, and D together, so all of 5.
Wait. Maybe you were going to do the same thing. I know one of these is about Jocelyn Perez, and I think we should highlight that. One of these is a salary increase because our guidance counselor at Farragut completed her national board certification, which my understanding is it's harder than getting a PhD. It's a huge, huge accomplishment, and I think to recognize it at the board level at a board meeting is important for us to do. So congratulations to Jocelyn. We appreciate her hard work for all these many years. She is beloved and respected, and that at this point in her career to finish this up is beyond impressive.
Thank you for pointing that out, Lisa. I asked Lauren about that, and she said that's
We were going to
pretty
have her
impressive.
visit at the future board meeting that also Ms. Kipper is going to be coming to, so I was holding my comment for that.
Yeah, so that's what I had asked.
Well, should we invite, because there's a few other people have received it also, so should we invite those individuals? I'm
Let's
just saying.
talk about, let's figure
Yeah, I just
out
want to
the
be,
best
like, if you're going to do
strategy for that, yeah.
And then we just want to acknowledge that Ahava Steinbauer is retiring effective January 1st, and we thank her for her close to 20 years of service in the district, and we wish her well.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve 5A through D?
Can I just ask a
Consent
question
agenda?
about the D? I couldn't pull up the Schedule B appointments. Just how many things are on that, Maureen?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just looking, because it's not, yeah, you can't, it's not attached here.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. She's lovely.
Yeah, I think we need a kudos for that, yeah.
That's true, we can say
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, actually,
Yeah.
it came from the personal office. And
While we're looking for that,
I don't know why it's not showing here.
under the appointments, I just want to shout out, because I think this is awesome, Jordan Pena is appointed to permanent building substitute, and she is one of our graduates as well.
Oh, great.
So,
Great, congratulations, Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I think that's a lot of her. She's a lovely girl.
Did we need to...
Table the Schedule B for now, because there's something with the attachment
Okay.
that's not showing up.
Thank you.
Okay, where is that on the...
Okay, so you want to vote, Doug, and just tabling Schedule B?
Yeah, so let's take A through C as a consent agenda. All in favor? Or second?
Second.
All-
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and D2. D2. So moved?
Second.
Okay. Second, all in favor? Okay. So we'll come back to the Schedule Bs next time. Minutes from November 29.
I have one comment, well, actually, two comments. First is a tremendous thank you to Janine, because I think before we had the questions, and now you added in the answers. This was the bond form. But there was one answer. I just wanted, I don't know if it was the answer given or not, but I want to correct it. Somebody asked, how long will music be on a cart if there isn't enough space? And the response in the minutes was, music is planned to be on a cart for next year unless the board wants to go in the direction of getting trailers on site. I just want to make sure that we clarify, make sure that it is, we will get a recommendation from Hillside as to what they want to do in terms of space. It's not our independent decision. So I just wanted to clarify that we will be looking to Hillside for their recommendation on how to deal with space constraints for next year and the following year.
But I guess if the recommendation would be, if it was to be a trailer, the board would just have to authorize the
We
expenditure.
would have to approve
So
a
that, I guess, may have
recommendation,
been...
sure, because it has a financial implication.
I think, too, the previous speaker who brought this up, they're also thinking in terms of whether there's any other sort of way to bridge, even if, you know what I'm saying, that they would, so they're sort of going to generate ideas about.
Yep. Yeah, so we're going to do that with the architects.
So how about any other minutes, the 3rd or the 10th?
Well,
Any
the 10th
questions?
don't have minutes yet, right? They're not ready.
Or the 3rd. Okay, so then, well, can we approve, we can approve the video link, though, can't we?
Well, but
Yeah.
they're not minutes. So we have to wait for those minutes to approve, but we can
We
approve
just change it
December
on
3rd
the
and
agenda to
November
video
29th.
link? From video
Just
link
do A
for
and B.
December
Just do
10th?
A and B, and we'll roll C for the next
But
meeting.
by law, we have to have minutes. We can't have a video as minutes.
Yeah.
So motion to approve 6A and B.
So moved.
A second? All in favor? And we'll come back to C. Does anybody have any questions about the committee, the Facilities Committee report? We don't.
Excellent notes, Lauren, thank you.
You can do them from now on. No, I just wanted to acknowledge that with the skate park, they're asking just for the board to write a letter of support that we would be comfortable with allowing them to build on Burke.
I guess, from my perspective, we need to know the insurance element of it. There's a reason, I believe there's probably a reason why in Ardsley, the skate park is on...
It's on the school property.
It's not on school property, it's on the park, it's on...
That's Ardsley Middle School.
Yeah, no, I know, but the public park, what do they call it, Ashford? I believe it's part of Ashford, where Ashford soccer fields are, and then the skate park is there.
Right.
In Yorktown, the skate park is, so that's the only thing I would want to check is whether or not, because...
So pending that, we would be properly...
Pending the school doesn't have liability if somebody gets hurt, because it is...
I mean, just quite frankly, any time a child gets hurt in the park down at Reynolds, we're liable, because we do own that property as well.
Well, I understand that, and that's one thing, but
Yeah.
with a skate park,
I know, I
you're talking about kids, your frequency of arm breaks at Reynolds or a skate park.
Right.
Right, I know.
And serious breaks,
Right.
et cetera, it happens. And that's the one thing that I wouldn't, so I'm not
ready to sign that
Sure.
until I really
So,
know what
so we'll
the
get the
legal-
information on the insurance, but then, and then the other piece would just be if anyone is interested, just to kind of walk the site to have a better understanding of where it would actually be located, that may be helpful. So I'll just tell them that I'll get back to them in January with an actual letter once we have that information. Okay.
And thank you for all the work, because I have to say, it's a great project for these kids. They came to us prepared, articulate, researched, and they're seeing their work go somewhere.
Yeah, I do like it. I will literally skate there. I want to know.
If we're talking about insurance.
Well, exactly.
Liability.
There you go.
Now we know why you're asking for insurance.
There you go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for putting these notes together. They were detailed and very helpful. Okay, second public comment.
Hi, Ann Cunningham, 6 Nichols Drive, also co-president of the PTSA. I just wanted to state, the talk about where the director of special education lands in the organizational spectrum, I feel it's imperative that the director have some sort of authority over the building level administration, because I've been in meetings where I realize that I'm asking the wrong person the question and about why things aren't changing for our kids. I sort of heard today, and I'm not really clear on this, that maybe we would wait and to determine where that person is in the organizational structure after we've hired an assistant soup. And I just don't think that is acceptable at this point. I think we need to know that the special ed organization is going to be more effective and efficient, and we can't sort of push that decision aside and just wait and see, who's got what qualifications. I just want to state that for the record. I want positive change for our kids, and I don't think waiting is necessarily going to make that happen.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that. I thought that maybe the board...
No, I don't think you did, actually, Charlie. I think other people on the board were thinking, well, maybe we can wait. I don't think we can. So, just...
Part of the job description.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Rizzo. I'm a longtime resident of Hastings. I grew up here. I went to school here. I'm very invested in this community. I'm very invested in these schools. I'm an educator myself. And I just wanted to say...
Coach.
And I coach a lot of basketball.
She is.
I wanted to point out that when we're looking at the organization, one thing that Doug said is a director can still be above the building level principals. And I think that's, if we can't have everything aligned, I think we need to keep that in mind. Because although we want collaboration, that's a big buzzword, it's a big key, we want collaboration, I think there's also something to be said about power and also about expertise. So when they're collaborating together, the director of special ed, his or her expertise is going to be in special ed. And I think the building level principals might not have that expertise. And so if there was a little more power there, there might be a recognition that a director of special ed might know a little bit more about special ed than a building level person. And that power gives you that. And just that, like as an example, when Dr. Katzman spoke, one of the things she tasked the buildings with was to come up with an MTSS, a multi-tiered support system for kids who are struggling, but not yet at the level of special ed. And while she praised our district for doing it, we came up with 3 separate systems. We only have 3 buildings. How didn't we come up with one system? 2 of the buildings are connected. We're so close to each other. So I think that just goes to show you that there isn't collaboration. 3 different systems, 3 buildings in a tiny district. So that just goes to show you if we had someone with that power that could umbrella it all in, that would be a good thing. And also, while I also agree that by and large our children do well in this district, we also have to understand that it is an affluent district. And we as parents and families are giving them really good products most of the time. So yes, a lot of kids thrive here, but a lot of kids don't. and in an affluent district where we're paying a lot of taxes, and we are a place that people are moving into by droves, they want to come here, they should get more for that. They should get more for all the students, not just the students that are going to thrive anywhere, but students that we're going to help thrive here. Thank you.
Hi, sorry for the repeat. My name's Kate Lowengart. I'm at 9 Amherst Drive, and I'm also the co-president of SEPTA. And the reason I'm getting up at almost 11 o'clock at night is because it is greatly distressing to hear all of you debate what Dr. Katzman meant. She has come twice to our district. She has shown us org charts. She was very, very clear. There is a triangle, the soup is at the top, and the assistant soup of curriculum and the assistant soup of special ed are even. Whether we call it if we call one a director and one assistant soup, that's not even. We all work in places. If you have the same job as somebody but they have a better title, they have a better title. They have more say, people respect them more. I just can't believe we're still, if we need clarity, I would like all of you to just do a conference call with Dr. Katzman for 10 minutes. She will offer you clarity on this subject. I think there are a lot of people that are very concerned that this is just sort of in the ethers, when it's obviously, I'm very happy that we approved the curriculum director role tonight. That is a huge leap. You also, all of a sudden, have a PTSA and a SEPTA who are on the same page for this school district. That is a huge leap. We have made tremendous leaps. I want to thank, I know they had to leave, but on the record, I want to thank our sister organization, the PTSA, for truly being there alongside us tonight, because I think you all need to realize that both parents' organizations strongly believe this. And so I hope as we move forward and have these conversations, they happen swiftly, they happen effectively, and we don't have this swirl of who thinks what based on before. We have a roadmap of what is going to happen next, and I really encourage all of you to be part of getting us there. So thank you. Oh, sorry, one more thing. I would be remiss to not comment on the fact that every time special education services are presented to you for approval, they are absolutely essential and important to be done as soon as possible. For every service that you are being presented, there are parents that have had to advocate for their children. There's an IEP that has been written. There have been rooms of people who have discussed it. There's been a parent that has lost sleep at night. So I understand that there's procedures, but please, please, when you talk about that, understand that that is always timely and necessary. So I just wanted to underscore that, because sitting in the audience and hearing the conversation, I just want everyone to be very clear about that.
Wait, Kate, I just want to clarify. Nobody's going to have a delay in service because we didn't have the attachment,
They can't technically start it until you approve it.
No, but I think we approve a lot retroactively.
Did the word, I guess, just where they were state.
Okay, but let's just be clear.
Well, let me just look at the dates, yeah.
Let's find out, because if that's an issue.
Yeah, I just want to, I just feel like to be that family.
So will any child not be able to begin services because
I
we're not
don't
voting?
believe that's been our practice. in the
Okay, because if
district.
that is, then we should vote.
Right, let me just look at the dates on here.
But I don't want my first thing to be lost, because that was the most important. Don't worry about it. I mean, truly, the word chart. Know it, love it, live it.
Can we vote that if there is a child who would be delayed, that we can vote to allow those services to take place? Is that okay?
Yep.
In case there's an issue?
Look at it, because it was in the executive portion
Be able to just pull it up and look at it now?
No, I can't give it a decent look. No, that would be inappropriate. But if we can do a conditional vote that if there's any child whose services would be delayed, that may begin.
Yeah, you could abstain. You want to just do that?
Let's do that.
What was your first point? I'd like to know, Kate's first point.
Aren't we done?
No, it's very, I don't want us to lose the impact of the audit is the most important thing, and you all approved the audit, and so you have to stick to that org structure. End of story.
You're just asking for too much now. There are people in the audience, by the way, who say they have not gotten services because of delayed votes, so you should probably have a larger conversation about it. But my name is Rob McQueen, and I live at 16 South Calumet. And I just want to go on the record that I sent a note to the Board of Education. I copied our combined parent-teacher associations because I consider them as one, and I wanted them to also have the chance to get the clarity that I was requesting in my note to the board. I also sent it to Dr. Wilson. And I just want to go on record because I think it's really apropos about how we get so caught up in this quicksand that we're in. We need clarity on things. You need them, the teachers need them, the administrators need them, the parents need them, and more importantly, Lauren, the children need them. And thank you, because second week in a row now, you focused on the children. And those statistics, unfortunately, are on video so that our future superintendent, assistant superintendents may now see that we've been struggling. But thank you, because that data doesn't lie. We're struggling. I know my kids in 5th and 8th grade are struggling. So I appreciate that, and thank you for putting the focus on the children and their success or lack thereof. But what I asked for was a little bit of clarity around what the audit said and what Dr. Katzman said. I heard her very clearly say back 2 years ago, 18 months ago, that we should have a cabinet-level organizational structure. I don't really care what the other districts do, although I have also researched them. Most of them have directors or of either special ed or pupil personnel services or assistant superintendents in that role, because there are some that do. But regardless, they have authority and decision-making for special education over the principals. The principals do not report to them. They have authority over special education issues, period. In Pelham, where I graduated, so I use it as my example, not because of Dr. Wilson, but because it's my school. They have in the cabinet, and it's called the cabinet, a superintendent, an assistant superintendent of pupil and personnel services, an assistant superintendent, which is where special ed falls, an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, and an assistant superintendent of business operations. And they also have a public information officer. That's in the cabinet. There is not one principal who even has a dotted line to the assistant superintendent of pupil and personnel services. Not even a dotted line. The dotted line goes to the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. The straight line goes to the superintendent. That is best practice organizational structure. That is what our consultant, the auditor who was sent here by, I guess, the state, in our settlement, recommended. It is what you approved and adopted in August of 2017. So thank you for the first piece of clarity that I asked for. Nobody responded, but I asked for, which was whether or not we would go assistant superintendent of curriculum. The second thing is you've already voted to adopt the cabinet-level organizational structure that the findings of Dr. Katzman said was making us ineffective and inefficient. You took the recommendation and adopted it. That means you are responsible to the children and parents of this community to structure it that way. If you don't, I think you're going to have some problems down the line. You can't just keep kicking this down the road. It doesn't matter if it's an assistant superintendent title or a director title.
You're way past 3 minutes, so you...
I'm sorry. You guys went till 11:04, so I'm going to keep talking.
Rob,
I'm not going to...
3 minutes. Rob, you get 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to go back up for another public comment. If somebody else comes.
Well, let me just say, the model you just described is the one that I subscribe to, and which you had also mentioned before.
Hi, Jennifer Cunningham. I'm still a Hastings resident. I think I still live at 43 Warren Street. I'm not sure. But, you know, having been the former SEPTA president, I worked in an era where special ed, SEPTA, was always treated as less than by PTSA, by the district. And to some degree, that still exists. And I think that's what we need to get behind as a community and a district. No one is more than or less than. No one is general education or special education. We have a group of diverse learners. I sat in on a CSE meeting where a severely dyslexic student who was behind in reading has an IQ in the 99th percentile. Okay? When you go to look at schools that do special education, when you look at York Prep, when you look at Harvey, when you look at Windward, those students thrive. They go on to all of the places that we put up here. Oh, this is great. They're going to Yale. They're going to Georgetown. Guess what? A child with special education, the other student who is otherwise bright and intelligent, has just as much capability of achieving all of those things. It's just that we've been failing them as a district and as a community because we have treated them as other and we have treated them as less than. It's time for us to start treating our curriculum thought process as the same. It's not general education and then special education and principals. It's general and special ed because you need to have these decisions made in concert. Every curriculum decision impacts all students. And you need to have a comprehensive plan and accountability. The principals and teachers need to be accountable to the master plans. People who understand general education and special education and how they intersect, they need to have accountability. And power and accountability is important. Reporting structure is important. Otherwise, if it was just all about collaboration and what we want to do, people don't know what they don't know. And until they're held to certain standards and accountability, they're not going to make changes. Change is hard. And I get that. We all fear change. But it's time to fix this. This has been going on way too long.
Hello, I'm Eric Schultz from 160 Mount Hope. I'm just a little tired also. I first want to thank everybody for approving the assistant superintendent position. It is not an easy process you guys have gone through, and I really appreciate everything you've done to get there. The one request I make is that as you're deciding organizational decisions, that when the rubber hits the road, that it makes sense. For example, when you have a special ed teacher, you can't have dual lines of like, I could be observed by the curriculum director and be observed by the special ed director, and then all of a sudden I get two different directions of where I'm running. This stuff can get very muddy if you don't get the details right. I don't know enough about all the organizational structures that you can choose from, but what I'm asking for is that you choose from when you choose the organizational structure and you choose the roles and responsibilities, that you don't have overlaps in such a way that somebody can get misinformation or go in different directions that make things very confusing for them. Too many times that happens within organizations, especially in education, and then people take advantage of it in ways that don't work out for anybody. Separately, I have a request from the board. We're talking a lot about transparency for what other districts are doing with spending, what they're doing with organizational structures. I like to have very clear transparency in our performance. I don't know, and I do a lot of digging, what the high school AP scores are, like a distribution of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in the different courses we have. We don't know. I don't know what our region's pass rates are. I do know I can pull those from the sites, but I don't know what the region's pass rate is for 8th grade students versus 9th grade students in algebra. And a thorough presentation of our actual performance and stack that against the neighbors would really be appreciated, because as of right now, I can't see it. Maybe you do see it. Maybe it's been presented at another board meeting that I can't spend all the time to watch the entire thing that will go on to 11 o'clock. But I'd like to see some transparency where it's posted somewhere on the website.
Eric, just to let you know, that presentation has typically been made at the high school PTSA meetings with Lou Pietro and sometimes Jeanette Coker, and they present about our APs and our Regent scores. And I know traditionally our AP passage of 3, 4, and 5 has been extraordinarily high, as is our Regent scores. But that's where that usually takes place?
So I'm asking, I don't know what's included in that distribution. I'm not trying to get an interchange here because I know it's not with the rules. I'm asking how many 3s, how many 4s, and how many 5s in the different subjects. And I know that when I went to a presentation for Farragut Middle School, we were given percentiles of where we were, not actual what pass rates we had. And some real clarity behind real numbers would be really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I know it's late, very, very late. My name's Deb King, and I live on Burnside Drive. And I'm just going to, I don't think we do get those AP scores at that breakdown level, because I've been very curious. No, it's definitely not at the breakdown level, and it would be very, very helpful to see, what our kids are getting at the high school level. More importantly, though, it really boggles my mind that Dr. Katzman was so very clear, so very, very clear about the authority that the Director of Special Education or Assistant Superintendent, whatever you want to call that position, needs to have over principals. And I'm not sure if people sitting here right now around these tables understand what that even means on a daily basis for the kids, okay, and for the parents. Because right now what is happening is finally we're in a position where things are starting to become better, perhaps, where kids, maybe they're getting the services, on paper that they need, that they weren't before in our district, okay? Or maybe they're in resource room. But here's what happens. When what's happening in that resource room is not according to the IEP, or not according to the accommodations, or not according to the paper, there is no one to go to. The parent goes to the Director of Special Education, who prescribed and knows the special education law. They go to that person. Laura has no authority. She cannot tell the teachers in that resource room what to do and what not to do. Okay? Let that sink in just for a second. A student is sitting in resource room for a reason, okay? A legal reason. You are opening yourselves up for more legal issues, because now the parent is supposed to go to the principals, okay, who are wonderful people. They do not have the breadth or depth of the knowledge legally of special education. Okay, but now they are responsible. This is a problem. When accommodations are not being met legally in the building, Laura, right now, the Director of Special Education, can do nothing about it in terms of authority. She cannot come and say, this is not being implemented correctly, this is how you have to do it, otherwise we're going to get sued. She can't say those things because she can't say you have to do it this way. This is a very big deal. This is now left up to the people who don't necessarily have that knowledge. Okay? I just want you to understand on a daily basis what is happening out there for the kids, to the kids, and the parents.
I think, right on the money, great explanation of the problem and why it is that sometimes we are unable to expedite the changes that are required as soon as we're just not being able to do it because of the dynamic we described. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any board comments?
In response, or just?
No, just in general. We're at the.
You mean, are you on the section of Board of Ed comments, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do have a comment, which is, even though it's so late, I had a few, I'm only going to say one. I love it that we honored the athletes. I'm a mom of athletes, and I love it. But I also think if we're going to do that, we have to also honor musicians, actors, other people in the school who get recognized.
I think that's a great idea, and I think because the board has had so much to do with the bond and everything else, that maybe that's been neglected. I don't know that it
No,
is, but
I don't think we've ever done it, and we've just started doing athletes relatively recently.
yeah, I can tell you that's common practice in most schools, and I think you're absolutely right. It should be done.
We sometimes have done the...
We've done national merit,
and we've done the...
ACTSHAL when they won the national title.
Yeah.
So this is my board comment, which is, I appreciate all of you that are stayed till 11:15, everyone else that stayed until variance of between 9:30 and 11:15. We're all pretty sharp individuals sitting here. All of your comments are understood, processed. I certainly appreciate, and I feel free to speak for my colleagues up here, where you're coming from and what your thought processes are that are driving you, that are behind each one of these statements. I think we have work to do. We have work to do. We'll continue to do the work. I think it is, and now I'm just speaking for myself to clarify.